What's happening out there, rotoscouts baseball fans? Welcome to a Wednesday show, gang. Happy hump day. Hope your weeks are going well. Hope you had a better baseball night last night than I did with my New York Yankees stack. That one did not work out. How about Seth Lugo getting there again despite just being Seth Lugo? I don't know. Hell of a good start. Kept the Yanks off the board. A lot of the other spots we talked about yesterday came through, though. I know that twin stack was there, but missed on that one, and back to the grind today. Looks like an interesting Wednesday slate. We've just got 8 games up. Should be a breeze to talk through. A lot of good pitching options on this one. Got a little bit of a crowd in here so far. Cujo's here, Andy's here, Harold Haas here for the early show. Harold wasn't around yesterday. I had to take son to the hospital. Oh, geez, hope everything's all right. Nothing life-threatening, something had to be taken care of right away. All right, well, hopefully everything's going well now, Harold, and good to have you back, buddy. Sorry to hear that was the reason. Cujo sending some good thoughts there. Andy as well. Good community here. Love that. Good stuff, guys. Let's see what else. Some scheduling stuff. As usual, just behind the curve with getting football done. I'm like halfway through checking the weekly projections for every single player. So got to bear with me on that. As far as shows go, it's probably at this point going to be tomorrow instead of today. We'll do like quarterback stacks, first looks kind of a thing, where we'll do like the shape of the slate. We'll talk about each quarterback, their opportunities, which informs the rest of what stacks look good. That will be a little bit of talk about the skill players, like, oh, he's able to throw this guy who's a deep threat, so on and so forth. And then Friday, instead of the full-on marathon show, at least that'll cut us down somewhat, and we'll do the game by game, but we're only going to be talking like skill players and highlight points. And I think that'll get us a little bit more economic. It's still not exactly where I want things. I'm just, again, behind schedule, and I don't have Saturday to work with this week because my sister's getting married. Congratulations, Kate, by the way. I'm looking forward to the wedding. It should be fun. But it just cuts into the scheduling, so doing the best with what I can. Week 3 forward, we should be in action. We should be good. We should have content early in the week. We should have daily shows throughout the week, or at least like Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. So we'll see how that comes together going forward. It didn't come together at all last year as far as actually putting that schedule together, but this year I'm determined to get it right. So let's dive into this baseball slate now that a few people are here. Hit the like button as we get started. Hit the subscribe. Check out our guys at acemind.io. Check out the info down below for any kickbacks and so on and so forth, and links to AceMind, information about them. The promo code's rotoscouts, all in caps, if you want 20% off your first month. Definitely a good time to be checking those guys out. A couple of free days off the top from them gets you to the weekend, basically, and then once you decide to subscribe, you can probably get a nicely timed add in this week. So I would say actually don't do it today. Start it on like Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Actually, depends on the timing. But you could probably work it so you get Sunday for free on top of a 20% off month if you time it right. Anyway, like I was saying, pretty interesting slate. A little 8-gamer. Oh, I did want to... We got a few lineups in. Before I dive in, let me just grab those and update the site. How's everybody doing out there? Good weeks? I almost asked if everybody watched the debate last night, but we're not going to have that conversation. What are you guys watching other than political theater? Anything good out there? Kind of into this new season of the Rings of Power. I think it's pretty good. If you're into Lord of the Rings and Tolkien and all that stuff, it's a pretty enjoyable show. It's all the deep lore. First season was good. I know people have their complaints. I think it fell short of being like great or must watch or anything. This season started out strong. I'm kind of into it. All right. This guy's just not on either slate, so we don't have to worry about him. Bear with me just one sec while I get this updated for the site. It's just the Yanks, the Royals, and the Angels in so far. And Eric Wagaman. Sounds like he's right-handed. He is right-handed. He's in the lineup for Los Angeles, but he's not on the site. Zero that out, and we're good. All right. So, does look like another day where the Yankees in that first game are going to be potentially a little bit limited. And I'll pop the Vegas board up there. They're at a 4.37 implied total because it is, Aaron Judge, Juan Soto, and a collection of other guys wearing the uniform against a very, very good pitcher. But they still draw a little bit of upside and a little bit of ballpark benefit from playing in Yankee Stadium anyway. So it's difficult to suppress the Yankees below 4 runs no matter who's on the mound. But Ragans is very, very good. So I can see the Yanks falling short. They can get victimized by good lefties. They can get victimized by bad lefties from time to time. Which is weird because they've got a lot of very good, or theoretically very good right-handed bats. Where's this projections link? There we go. Everything's in a different spot because football started back up. So like this was the one you recently used, have been replaced by a variety of football spreadsheets, so I just have to scroll to different spots now as I upload these things. Upload. It's fun, isn't it? All right, that's up, and let me just change the timestamp. All right. We're in business. Tillsman's rewatching Dexter after the Red Sox disappoint me nightly. I rewatched Dexter when that new series, when the next gen, whatever they called it, came out on Showtime like 2 years ago, I want to say. I like the first few seasons. I feel like Dexter falls off relatively quickly though. Like the first season was really good. The Lithgow season is fantastic, and then there's a couple okay ones in there, but I think it does fall off toward the end, and the last episode is just oof. Lone Wolf's here. What's going on, Lone Wolf? Yeah, I don't think that's breaking any new ground. I think that is kind of consensus opinion about Dexter, but yeah, Tiz is on board with that. Excellent, Lone Wolf's doing not too bad. Good. So diving in again, the Yanks drawing a little bit of a total, but it's Cole Ragans. I kind of lean in his direction. He is quite good. And then the Royals drawing just a 3.72 against Luis Gil, who came back and looked very good in his first outing back, his first outing back after being on the IL for a couple of weeks. He had also been kind of diminished in a couple recent starts, so coming out of the gate, pitching 6 shutout innings, giving up 1 hit and striking out 7 was a pretty good return. But we'll see. It is a low strikeout, very good Kansas City opponent. You saw what they did last night, so could come right back out, scratch out some runs again. Be low strikeout and limit the scoring for Gil. So I don't really love anything in that game, oddly. I think you can play any of it. It's all always going to be on the board because of the quality in both lineups, because of the quality that both pitchers have put up. If I'm picking one thing, it probably is Cole Ragans against the Yankees. But it's a little challenging spot. It's going to be an interesting one to look at. Next game up, a 9-run total between the Angels and the Twins. Looks like a targetable spot for some bats, but I also think that maybe you can get away with some pitching in this game. It's a weird one. We've got Kachanowicz on the mound for the Angels. He's gone 6 innings in 4 straight starts, 7 2/3 to start off before that, so it's 5 straight starts of at least 6 innings. Quality start in every single one of them. He's just low strikeout, so he's difficult as far as ceiling goes, but he's been putting up innings, and he's been putting up clean innings. He gives up hits. He gives up some runs. It's not perfect, but 3 or fewer runs, 6 innings has been a lock lately. It's not a great target with the Twins on the other side, but they're not invulnerable. And then going the other way, and the Twins are drawing a 5.31 implied total, by the way. We're definitely considering Twins bats. I'm just saying it wouldn't completely shock me if Kachanowicz pitched another relatively clean game at a cheap price. 3 runs, 2-3 strikeouts. Strikeouts are his big problem. He's peaked at 4 strikeouts so far. The other side of that one, Zebby Matthews on the hill for the Twins, has been kind of problematic. He is a talented kid. He does have very good strikeout stuff, but he's also been victimized by home runs, I think is fair to say so far at the major league level. So we're seeing some power for the Angels. They're at just a 3.80, but I'm not sure I totally buy it. I kind of think the Angels look playable to okay. So this one I kind of sort of lean bats, but I do think you can get away with either of those pitchers on the right day. Nick Pivetta against the Orioles. Could definitely get away with Nick Pivetta. He's talented enough to beat that Orioles team. He's high strikeout, but the O's in Fenway Park, difficult to suppress. They're drawing a 4.48 implied total. On the other side, another one of the highest totals on the board, the Red Sox against Dean Kramer. Seems like a no-brainer consideration for some stacks with all those good lefties in that lineup. 5.13 implied total for Boston. Cincinnati, St. Louis, just 8 runs on the board there. Reasonable totals, 3.76 implied runs for Cincinnati against Lance Lynn. And then the Cards drawing a little bit more of a total, 4.32 against Brandon Williamson. He went 3 1/3 and then 4 2/3 in his 2 starts back. He wasn't bad, but he wasn't exactly good. Looks more like a target for Cards bats, but they're a little bit middle of the board overall. The Athletics against a very talented and still pitching very well basically all season, Hunter Brown. He looks very good up near the top of the board. A's, the top several hitters in that lineup, as we've looked at recently, are effective. They hit a lot of home runs. They hit for power. They create runs pretty well now. So it's not completely unthreatening, but it is a high-end matchup still for a pitcher of Hunter Brown's talent. As a hedge, or probably not as a hedge because Hunter Brown's good enough, but as an angle into the slate, maybe we take a look at the top end of that Athletics lineup. But overall, Brown's been really good. He hasn't been bad for home runs, so difficult opponent for them. The Astros look really, really good. Couple of very nice-looking home run numbers against Joey Estes, who's on the hill, just mediocre on the mound for the Athletics. I like the looks of Kyle Tucker, Jordan Alvarez, all the obvious guys in that lineup. Tucker's the home run pick of the day at a solid double-digit over the magic number mark. Jordan Alvarez was right there. So really like the look of the Astros today. Not that that's completely, surprising. They're the biggest favorite on the board. They're drawing a 4.93 implied total. Pods and the Mariners with 7 runs on the board. A very, very good pitching matchup between Brian Wu and Michael King. King should deal against that Mariner squad. 3.53 implied total for them. But don't sleep on Brian Wu. He's been fantastic this season, and he is very, very good. It's just a low strikeout Padres opponent on the other side. Might keep his scoring in check, might lower his ceiling a little bit. So he's very good. Wouldn't shock me at all if he won the slate. But he's going to be more challenged to get there than I think King on the other side against the Mariners is. The Brewers, Colin Ray's on the mound for them up against the Giants. Leads me to believe that the Giants could create some runs here. 3.78 implied total would suggest otherwise, but Colin Ray is at least targetable. He's been up and down throughout his short career so far, but he's a guy who gives up home runs in bunches. 2 out of his last 3 times out, he gave up 2 home runs in each game. He had a 4 home run game allowed against the Dodgers back on August 13th. A couple other 2 home run games throughout here. So he's always been targetable for power, and then it just comes down to who you're putting on base and, what's your run creation looking like. There's also a weird situation weather-wise in this San Francisco game. There's a big debate among the ballpark people about what happens with the wind in this ballpark, down to the point where, and Roth mentioned it, some people think that when the wind is blowing out here, it actually suppresses home runs. I'm not exactly sure how that would work, but maybe it's the case. I have not looked into it, but I have seen it before, and again, Roth mentioned it. He also tends to disagree. Now I don't know how much he's looked into it or if he understands the physics of it or whatever either. But he does at least mention that. It's a 20-mile-an-hour wind blowing out in San Francisco. Not a great hitting environment anyway. It's going to be another cool night out there, I expect. So I don't think it's a great situation. And then if you pile on the idea that the wind might actually suppress power, it just makes it weird. So it's a pitcher I love to target in what seems like it should be a really good hitting environment based on the wind, but not so much based on the park and the temperatures. It might just be deceptive if people are getting into that the wind is blowing out. So really just a weird spot. 3.30 is believable on the Brewer side because they're facing Blake Snell. So I'm not sure how much we consider bats in that one. We'll talk about it again when we get there toward the end of the show. Final game, Cubbies at the Dodgers, an 8.5 run total on the board there. 4.82 of it going toward the Dodgers. They're facing Jordan Wicks, and then it's Bobby Miller on the hill for the Dodgers facing the Cubs. 377 and 378 implied total for them. He's gone 5 in each of his last 2 starts, went 6 before that. Solid strikeout totals in 2 of them, weak strikeout total in the third one, but was okay for runs in 2 of them, and then a good strikeout total, but allowed 7 runs against the Angels in the most recent one. So the results have been a little bit all over the map for Bobby Miller, but he is a talented kid. Pitching board wise, we're looking like that. Lot of guys all clumped up together among the believable ace caliber, or maybe one day will be considered ace caliber types. Snell and Ragans, I think, have basically earned that mantle. King probably on his way. Hunter Brown possibly on his way. Luis Gil I don't think is that caliber. I think he's another step down. But he's also got a little bit of that baked into his price. He's slightly cheaper than everybody else up top. But Snell, totally believable, with ceiling up at the top of the board there for those prices, 96, 98. I have no problem paying those prices for Blake Snell, even against what I do think is a pretty decent Brewers lineup. King against Seattle, definitely high priority target, 10,000, 9,600, no problem paying that. He's a high strikeout pitcher. He's very, very good against the lineup we've been targeting literally all season long. Ragans, again, that is my favorite piece, I think, in that Yankees game. I can absolutely see him going into Yankee Stadium, suppressing that offense over 6-7 innings, pitching a very good game, finding some strikeouts along the way. So no issues there. There's a little bit of a median gap, but I think the ceiling is basically the same for him as Snell, King, Brown. Good matchup for Brown against the A's, 9,400, 9,000. He's a little bit offset by price compared to King and Ragans, at least, slightly on DraftKings. A lot of upside, similar ceiling. He's pitched 2 ceilings that are equal to what those top 3 pitchers have throughout the season. So I don't think there's any reason to expect that he would necessarily fall short. Looks like a very good option. You can absolutely play the price, fit, popularity game through those. Any one of those guys at the top of your lineup is a good decision today. There's really not a problem there. The most threatened is probably Cole Ragans, but he also might be the most talented in that group. Gil against Kansas City, I just still do not trust Luis Gil all that much. I still do think he's pitching basically over his head. But the results have largely been there throughout the season. It's just that when you pile on Yankee Stadium and a Kansas City lineup that I generally don't like to target regardless of what ballpark they're in, makes it a little bit of a stretch for Gil. That said, he probably does go under-owned by comparison to the top 4 pitchers above him there. So for that reason, he is at least on the board. And he's not unfairly priced for what he's doing out there this season. Pivetta, high strikeout pitcher, could definitely find success. 88, 84, not a bad price to find him at. Just a really tough opponent in a really challenging ballpark. But he pitches half his games in that park, so he kind of knows what he's doing there. It's going to be less threatening for him than it might be for other pitchers. But definitely, you can see the big basement beneath Nick Pivetta. But he does have, approaching a similar ceiling at the very least to the guys above him on the board. Wu, tremendous pitcher, just a tough matchup, but the price is right, 87 and especially 81 on DraftKings. Very, very interesting there. Zebby is going to be challenging. We'll talk about him again when we get there. Like I said, he's given up a ton of home runs. He's also got a lot of strikeout stuff. He's facing an Angels lineup with a ton of strikeouts, not a lot of reliability, not a ton of threatening hitters. It's a collision of 2 different things in the model. We're going to see a ton of home run upside on the Angels side. We're going to see a little bit of upside for Zebby, as you can see right there, and especially at price. I think he's undeniably playable today. Yeah, you're probably still taking a bit of a chance because we haven't seen him at peak form. But he's a high-end prospect. He was succeeding at high levels in the minor leagues. So it's just a matter of finding his footing. And he's super cheap for what the upside looks like. Even if he comes in around the medians, you're okay. Just right where he's projected. And he does have upside beyond that in this matchup. If he manages to pitch his way clean through this game, he's got big upside. Ray, I don't trust as far as I can throw him, and especially with the weird situation with the wind in San Francisco. 82-78 is fine in a vacuum, but just doesn't seem like a good spot. And San Francisco's got enough power in that lineup that's one I would at least consider as like a late night, low-owned kind of a stack. There are home run hitters in that lineup, and again, Colin Ray can get nailed for home runs. He's been a guy I've targeted more than I've used, and I think that's been to my benefit. So don't really love him. He's realistic, I guess, as a mid-level option, but he's not really priced in line with all these guys below him with Zebby above him. Even Brian Wu at 81 is probably a much better option for 300 more. Not that far offset. I just don't like Colin Ray that much. Kramer is challenging in Fenway Park, but he's very cheap on DraftKings, 6,500. There's just enough there that you can roll those dice, but he's probably one of my least favorite on this board of discount options. Lance Lynn could find success against Cincinnati. I mean, it's not like he's expensive. We've seen more than enough out of Lance Lynn over the years to know that there's at least a semi-successful option there. Oh, what's his... I forgot to grab his game log, though. What's his rehab situation? You know what? He struck out 8. How many pitches did he throw in that game? Just seeing if I need to adjust this. It's not high. I didn't give him a lot of innings anyway, but I'm just reconsidering the. I forgot that I had to look up his rehab numbers. He made one rehab outing like 9 days ago, which means he's probably stretched out a little bit in the bullpen since. He went 3 2/3 in that one. He gave up 5 earned on 7 hits. He faced 20 hitters, struck out 8. I don't have a pitch count, which is bothering me. Presumably he threw a fair number of pitches in that, given the runs, the strikeouts. Doesn't seem like the most efficient start. I just want to... Okay, there it is, 80. All right, so I think we're okay on that projection because it's right in line with 80 pitches. So even if he goes out and throws 80 again, there's at least strikeout upside. For 7,000, it puts him loosely on the board, but you're probably challenged for ceiling there. On FanDuel, I think you're probably challenged to get 6 innings and any kind of quality. So it's really a DraftKings only play, and it's probably thinner than some of these other ones. Miller's got upside at 73 against the Cubs. There are definitely strikeouts for him to go find there. Wicks, I don't like at all against the Dodgers. Joey Estes is a challenge against the Astros. Brendan Williamson against the Cards maybe will kick around a little bit. And then, like I said before, Kachanowicz, oddly, at 5,500, I do think is on the board. Despite not projecting well, it's just a matter of I can find some cheap, clean innings. And you know, if I'm booking 6 and change innings there, 3 or 4 strikeouts, if he gives up 2 runs, somehow finds his way to the win against a pitcher that has been beatable in his brief major league career so far, with a lineup showing a lot of power. I don't think it's a ceiling play. I think it's really only an SP2 play on DraftKings. I don't know that you go there on FanDuel at 62, but you could realistically, because there is quality start upside. Again, he's booked a quality start in a bunch of starts in a row, and he's been pitching just efficiently and deep into games. He's just not a strikeout pitcher. A lot of contact, some runs scored. But he's very, very cheap. He does make things work. Lone Wolf's likes Matthews and Snell. That's a good pairing in my mind. I mean, if you wanted to get really funky about things and pair Kachanowicz and Zebby and just try and pick off one win there with 2 extremely cheap pitchers, that's another way to go. I wouldn't do that, but it's a way to go. But there's a lot of quality pairings. Like, obviously, any of those guys and Zebby. But I also, by the same token, I think any of these guys and just dropping down to Kachanowicz, which nobody's going to do. Zebby does have a more appreciable upside. He's double the median projection with a higher ceiling. But that's where everybody's going to land. If you don't like Kachanowicz down there, maybe you can drop in on one of these guys. You know, Dean Kramer at 65. It's a lot more threatened. It's probably a lot lower end. I think he's got a much more obstructed path to 6 innings of like 3-run ball, a quality start than Kajanowicz does for 1,000 less. But he's in the mix. 5 innings of Lynn, not bad. 73 for Miller. Again, I do think there's options outside of just going to what will be a chalky Zebby at 58. I have to imagine he's going to be the most highly owned SP2, let's say. FanDuel, we don't really care what the ownership looks like. Let's pull up DraftKings. Oh, yeah. Far and away. The highest owned guy below, in any kind of value price range. Anybody of comparable ownership is in the 8s and 9,000s. So basically, everybody in the brother is just grabbing Zebby and pairing him with one of those guys, or they're pairing 2 of those guys together. So again, if you make any different decision like Bobby Miller, you are already walking a different path, and you're building better lineups as far as your bats go because you're saving money. Or, well, actually, in that scenario, heads up with Zebby, you're spending a little bit more money. So you're still building different lineups with bats, but you're just putting together a differentiated lineup. That would, of course, depend on who you're pairing Bobby Miller with. But yeah, Zebby's going to be super highly owned, so that does seem like a chalk path, but it is probably the most correct path and the most direct path to winning. All right, so Cole Ragans, top of the board here at 29.6%. Strikeout rate on the season is pretty damn good. Stuff Plus loves him. Doesn't really give up much in terms of home runs. Doesn't really give up much in terms of barrels. Hard hit and exit velo are perfectly in line with a very talented pitcher. He's an ace. Cole Ragans is an absolute ace. I think he should be aggressively pursued in the spot against the Yankees. And among all the top pitchers, he's the least popular. Predictably so, because he's in Yankee Stadium facing the Yankees. There is downside in this situation. He's the least safe out of those top pitchers. But he's got, again, a very comparable upside, if not a higher upside to several of those guys at the top of the board. Monster strikeout pitcher, 14.6% swinging strike rate. Could exploit some of these Yankees power hitters who do, swing and miss from time to time. There are several aggressive strikeout rates right there. One of them is Aaron Judge, the best player in the world, but he does strike out, and he's been in a slump. It's been like 12 games since Judge's hit a home run, so he's been stuck at 51. Might get overtaken by Ohtani all of a sudden. An inexplicable decision by the Yankees' terrible manager to have Alex Verdugo not only in the lineup, but hitting 6th today against the lefty. I forget, I think Verdugo is okay against same-handed pitching, but who cares? Dominguez is a switch hitter. Seriously, I don't understand what we're doing. And Verdugo's been terrible against lefties this season. 228, 315, 285 at .057 ISO, 24% worse than average creating runs. He's been literally the worst hitter in baseball this season, or the bottom 3. It's completely inexplicable to have called Dominguez up and to still be putting Alex Verdugo in. And not only that, but giving him a critical spot in the lineup. Let's say you just wanted to go lefty, righty throughout the lineup like Boone clearly did. That spot should belong to Anthony Rizzo then. If you insist on putting Verdugo, and Verdugo should be hitting 8. It's an idiotic decision. Terrible, terrible, terrible manager. This is why the Yankees lose ball games. Because he's a terrible manager. Anyway, Luis Gil, 8,800, 9,000, 27.7% Ks on the season, a 3.24 ERA, but the xFIP, again, notably a run higher. This is what I mean when I say I think Luis Gil's pitching over his head. This is fine. You can be a decent 4-starter, 5-starter with a 4 and change ERA, a low 4s ERA. But he's overperforming by a full run, and it makes him look a lot better than he actually is. 12.5% walk rate, for one thing, is unsustainable. He's gotten away with it, but it eventually does crumble. Good, not incredible swinging strike rate, but a good above average swinging strike rate, 11.7%. Not a good CSW given that swinging strike rate, 27.3%. He should be a better strike thrower. 130 and 2/3 innings, and again, he has been successful. I don't know how much of it is real. I would not bet on him to repeat this season next year. 6 innings in his return last week after 2 weeks on the IL. 7 strikeouts against the Cubs at Wrigley. Again, there is a little bit of upside for righties against the Cubs for strikeout purposes, but that was a very, very good start. 1 hit, no runs, 2 walks. The start before that, before he landed on the IL, 3 innings against Cleveland. He had given up 3 runs. He walked 6 in that game, struck out 3. 4 innings against the White Sox the start before that. He gave up 4 earned on 7 hits, struck out 3, walked 2. An okay start against the Angels. He struck out 6, but he walked 5. Gave up 2 hits, no runs. Came out after 5 innings facing 22 hitters. 8 strikeouts, but 3 walks, a home run, 3 runs allowed on 5 hits over 5 1/3 at Philly. That's an okay start considering the opponent, but we still didn't get to the quality start. He had a bunch of short ones in a row. So, I don't know. I'm not a big fan. I think he's correctly priced for the performance he's given us this season, for the strikeout rate and the potential, but this is a bad matchup for strikeouts. This isn't really a super patient team when it comes to drawing walks. So at least he's got that going for him. But I think given that they know this is a pitcher with a walk problem, it's a day where they can walk up there with it as a strategy to, all right, we're going to keep the bat on our shoulders a little bit more. We're going to look for some free passes today. These guys are not incapable of drawing walks. So I hate the opponent for Luis Hill. You can roll the dice there, but he would be one of my lower owned of the higher quality pitchers. Again, perfectly fine projection for the money, no issues with it. Would play, but would be one of my lower owned options. Royals against, I think, is a good idea. Especially if you're rostering any Luis Hill. Just grab a little bit of a hedge position with the Royals at the very least. But they're just always going to be one of the more interesting teams. Especially in a ballpark like this against a pitcher who is mediocre. There's a lot of upside in going to KC, and they'll probably be under-owned again. Tommy Pham in the leadoff role, 9 homers, 7 steals, a 101 WRC+, now in a much better situation. Multi-category contributor for several seasons. Definitely a guy that you can plug into lineups and have at least a little bit of expectation of some fantasy points, but more correlated scoring option now. Bobby Witt, superstar at shortstop, easy to pay for even at those ridiculously high prices. 120 runs scored on the season. He's on the cusp of 100 RBIs. He's already hit his 30 home runs, slashing 334, 386, 597, creating runs 68% better than average. Barreling the ball like crazy, hard hit rate like crazy, doesn't strike out, medium walk rate. He's tremendous. One of the absolute best players in baseball at any position. Bobby Witt belongs in a bunch of Royal stacks. Easy to one-off Bobby Witt shares if you got a ton of money to spend at shortstop in other lineups where you don't stack Royals. And probably, again, just the slate in general, among all shortstops, probably falls a little bit under-owned compared to his talent level, compared to his upside. Sal for just 47 is an absolute bargain on DraftKings. 31 is a great price on FanDuel. You just consider him the first baseman. 277, 337, 475, 198 ISO, 21% better than average creating runs. Still crushes the ball when he makes contact from the right side. 26 homers on the year, another outside shot at getting to 30. MJ at 3,300, 2,700, has 17 home runs on the year, continues to hit the ball very, very hard. As we've talked about this week already, has made dramatic improvements in his strikeout rate, which makes him a better hitter, and he's a lefty going up against a righty who doesn't give up a ton of power, but does give up a lot of barrels on a high average launch angle, and is in Yankee Stadium, so anytime a lefty can just elevate the ball in Yankee Stadium, it's got a shot at getting out. Same thing goes for Michael Massey 2 spots later. I like that bat a lot at second base for a fair price. In between the two, Freddie Fitterman, definitely a playable option. Cheap catcher bat on DK. You can mix and match him, 2,600 and some shares on FanDuel. It's a good bat, 290, 338, 394. Just not a big home run hitter, not a big producer, but he's always putting the ball in play, getting on base, so you can get away with it. Frazier at 23, 24, just a mix and match quality guy, if that anymore. He's just very cheap with second base and outfield eligibility. Michael Garcia is a lot more interesting. Second base positioning, third base is eligible on both sides as well. 42, 29. For a guy with 33 stolen bases, that's okay. He can clearly get involved and contribute, and he hits the ball very hard with a 43.5% hard hit rate. He just hasn't found much success with it. 285 on base is very limiting. 239 average, 344 slug, just a 105 ISO this year. It's been a frustrating season for a kid who does have a lot of talent in his bat. Isbell just mix and match at the bottom. Outside of Anthony Volpe, everybody in the Yankees lineup looks pretty decent. Jose Trevino in instead of Austin Wells today because there's a lefty on the mound. I get it. Trevino's a mix and match catcher at the bottom. He has hit 8 home runs in 212 plate appearances, but not much of a hitter. He's more here for his pitch framing and defense abilities, which are both tremendous. So not a bad platoon catcher. Again, when he's in there, mostly considering his D, but for our purposes for DFS, kind of an afterthought at the bottom of the lineup. Rizzo's the most playable guy in the bottom 3. 35.27 is a very fair price for Anthony Rizzo's track record. You just have to have a little faith, and I'm just going to buy in on the bat on ball. 17% strikeout, 6.5% walks in his abbreviated season this year. He hasn't been good. He's hit 8 home runs, a 112 ISO, a 75 WRC+. There's very little to hang on to. Since that concussion last year, it's been a different player. But I have a little bit of faith in the upside at these prices as long as he continues to roll out in the Yankees lineup. I just wish he had a better batting order spot. Volpe and mix and match shortstop, 41, 3,000, 11 homers, 26 steals, nothing special. Can get involved, but doesn't with any kind of real frequency. So it's a challenging bottom 4. Should help Cole Ragans a little bit. Very good top 5, though. Glaber, decent second baseman at worst. 329 on base ahead of Judge and Judge and Soto is all I really care about. Those two, 65, 68 on DK, 45, 48 on FanDuel. Tremendous options, regardless of a little bit of a slump. Doesn't really matter. You just buy the upside. You know what it is. Judge still at a 10.51 in the home run model, despite Ragans being pretty good at suppressing power. You just put Aaron Judge against the lefty, he's going to come up with a 10 plus in the home run model. There's not much you can do about it. But you can see more of an impact on like Stanton, 7.18. That is very, very low for Giancarlo Stanton against the lefty. So that's the high quality that Cole Ragans brings. I would still play Stanton. I think he's underpriced at 48.31, underpriced on both sites. 25 homers and 407 opportunities, a 246 ISO, crushes the ball when he makes contact. In between, Jazz Chisholm, not a bad option. What's Jazzy doing against lefties this year? Jazz has just been a good pickup for this team. Provides a lot of what they were lacking. Gives them a little bit of a shot in the arm. Can't, for some reason, get a split slower. There we go. Less power, but quality. The slash line is not far off the slash line against opposite-handed. Against fellow lefties, 253, 323, 402. A 149 ISO is where the true gap is. 104 WRC plus. A lower WRC plus, but still 4 points above average. Against righties, he's 265, 331, 467 with a 202 ISO and a 118 WRC plus. So indisputably better against righties, but he does have six of his home runs against lefties, and he's been good. Those aren't bad numbers against lefties. So Jazz is definitely playable and probably goes under-owned for the matchup. On FanDuel, he's great because you get 3 positions out of him for a fair price. I like that option. You just rely less on the home run and think more of him in terms of a on-base correlated scoring option in the heart of the Yankees lineup. Cole Ragans, Royals bats, Yankees bats, Louis Seal. See if we reload Fantasy Labs if we get the Twins. Is it in? It is not. Mamba's here. What's going on, Mamba? Who was the SP2 for this slate? It was. It's a big topic that we'll get to. We'll actually write in this game, so I'll talk about it again right now because it's basically these two guys head to head. Zebby's going to be the super popular chalk option of the day, fairly and deservedly in the value range. You can see the good in with the bad right here with Zebby in his 5 starts. 7.36 ERA is obviously a total disaster so far, as is a 5.77% home run rate. Normally 4% we're calling you bad. Pushing 6, that's a problem over 5 starts. He's given up a 13% barrel rate. He's given up 41.6% hard hits, 90.2 miles an hour of exit velo. We're over the line here, dramatically over the line there, and ridiculously over the line there. 21.2% Ks so far in the show. He's a better strikeout pitcher as a prospect than that. That's a little bit lower than we would expect, but it's solid. It's at least a solid foot into the league with upside for more. 10.2% swinging strike rate to support that, but a 159 whip despite just a 2.9% walk rate. This is his best attribute in the show so far. It's been really challenging, but sometimes there is, talent to work with. It's just that everybody's going there. The walk rate is realistic for what he did throughout the minor leagues, and again, the strikeout rate is low. This season in AAA, over 19 innings in 4 starts, 28.4% Ks and 1.2% walks. That's an equally small sample. So we look to 9 starts in 55 and a third in AA this season. It's 30.1% strikeouts, 2.9% walks. He's been terrific. His control and command is very good. He does induce swinging strikes. He should be a good pitcher over time. It's just he's been a little bit shaky out of the gate. So we're pushing some decent home run numbers in this direction. Although with this confirmed version of the lineup, it looks like they're a little bit lower than the ones I had in there initially. You don't have Eric Wagman on either slate unless he got added. But you've got Nico down here just under 10. If we put him here, he'd be over 10. Just under 10 for Shanuel, which is not the best power option in the world. But he's a lefty. He has hit 12 home runs. There's a little bit of believability there. The 2 key hitters right there are the guys drawing most of it. But it's not the best version of the Angels lineup to throw at Zebby. So it limits the downside maybe a little bit. But he still is a high danger pitcher. And the fact that everybody is going there, it was when we pulled up the ownership on over at RG, he is owned equal to or more than most of the top $9,000, $8,000 pitchers on the slate. He was easily the chalk of the day. And it looks like all of the combinations on DraftKings are going to be either one of the top 5, 6 pitchers and Zebby, or just 2 of those guys together. That's where all of the ownership is. So there's no ownership on a guy on the other side of the board like Kachanowicz, who, again, is not a good pitcher. 4.89 ERA with a basically matching 4.86 xFIP over his 7 starts, his 38 2/3 innings, and you can see the pathetic strikeout rate. 7.4% strikeout rate. That's like Luis Arias' strikeout rate as a hitter. 4.9% walk rate. 6.5% swinging strike rate. This guy is the definition of a pitch-to-contact pitcher. He's also way over the line for hard hits, way over the line for exit velo, but 2.3 degrees. So we're dealing with a ground ball. 3.07% home runs in the short sample reflects some mistakes that he's made. As a pitch-to-contact pitcher, that is going to happen. So you need to add a little bit of strikeout upside to realistically be good, because if just everything is connected with, it somewhat negates the launch angle, because some of them will naturally get up into home run trajectory. So that's where this comes from, despite this being low. But this is still non-tragic. The fact that he's 5,500, you're getting him for 300 less than Zebby on the other side, and no ownership. It is a more limited spot as far as the ceiling goes, but as far as the free square nature of it, in a situation in which Zebby is by no means guaranteed to give up no runs or have a good start at all, I think you can absolutely consider Kachanowicz a solid pivot point. It's just one with limited ceiling. It's more just I'm buying the free square than I think this is a pitcher who has a cheap SP2 is going to go off and score a big day. But again, like I highlighted at the beginning of the show, the reason I'm saying all this, Kachanowicz, last time out, faced Texas at Texas. 6 innings, 3 earned runs on 8 hits, 0 strikeouts. But that's still a quality start. It's still 6 innings of okay ball for 5,500. The start before that, 6 innings at Detroit, a gettable Tigers team. Faced 22 hitters. He gave up 5 hits, but no runs, no walks. Struck out 4. Probably his best start. 6 innings against Toronto at Toronto. 3 earned runs on 7 hits, 1 strikeout, no walks. But again, the theme being, quality starts. Quality starts for very, very cheap. You would like to have some padding for strikeouts. He got to 4 twice. One of the 4 strikeout games was just in 4 innings. That was against the Oakland A's back on July 20th, one of his first outings. That was his worst start because he gave up 7 earned runs on 7 hits in that one and came out after 4. But the start after that one was where the run started. On August 11th, he went down. He didn't start between the 20th and August 11th. Started on August 11th against Washington, 7 2/3, 2 earned runs on 6 hits, 2 strikeouts, 1 walk, 1 home run allowed. Allowed a home run in the next game. But that next game, 6 innings, 2 earned runs on 7 hits, 0 strikeouts again, 3 walks. The total lack of Ks is your problem, obviously. But again, with a total lack of ownership at a rock bottom price, it at least puts him on the board as an alternative. Not a great opponent on the other side. The Twins are good at scoring runs, but this version of the lineup, depending on what we get, maybe a little bit gettable. Let's see, do we have a Twins lineup? Still no. If you're rostering Angels against Zebby, I do think that there's a big hedge position to be had there. If you do roster Zebby in any significant way, you should probably have some Angels on the other side of that in different lineups. Definitely just based on the power upside that is present in the home run model, based on the fact that there are at least a couple decent hitters in this lineup, though the confirmed version does leave something to be desired overall. They're still worth getting to, at least as a hedge, and they're a bit of an angle into the slate in terms of just being a cheap team with a couple playable parts. Those are primarily Taylor Ward, Zach Neto, and Nolan Chanuel off the top of the lineup. Those are their best hitters this season. Ward at 110 WRC plus, 22 home runs on the year, a 185 ISO. Very good barrel rate at 13.7%, a 43.2% hard hit rate. He strikes out 25.2% of the time. There are potential Ks here for Zebby if he can get his stuff together. Draws a 9% walk rate, but again, Zebby doesn't really walk too many hitters at any level of his professional career so far. So it does limit the opportunities probably for the Angels, even if they do hit their home runs. Who's on base? Neto at 44-33, 21 homers, 29 steals, a 197 ISO, 119 WRC plus. Chanuel is super cheap at 3,300, 2,700. He slipped a point below average for run creation, but he is a good stick, good on base option. Should develop into a good back control and hit for average type of a player. He's hit 12 home runs. It's not really his main characteristic, but a 9.61 in the home run model today. He's low strikeout, high walk, so could do some damage. Brendan Drury's been totally lost at the plate. They continue to roll him out in the cleanup spot when they don't have Rendon. They're both a waste of time. If we're just speaking historically, Drury does have power. He's up to 4 home runs in 322 plate appearances this season. A .063 ISO, a 36 WRC plus. Just dead. Mickey Moniak and Matt Thaiss are lefties who at least barrel the ball pretty effectively. 9.5% barrel rates for both of those guys. 386 plate appearances for Moniak. Thaiss, the backup catcher, 148 plate appearances. Neither one has been all that successful outside of being able to barrel the ball. 13 home runs for Mickey, 7 stolen bases, just a 267 on base is crushing, and 80 WRC plus. Does have a lot of raw skills, has never really put it together, but if you're playing Angels, I do think working in some of the power hitting lefties is probably a good idea. So he makes the cut for that. Thaiss maybe is a cheap backup catcher who does have a little bit of power in his bat. He's only hit 2 home runs this year, but does, based on the contact profile, have some believable home run upside. Last year, 9 homers and 307 plate appearances. Gives a little bit of an indication of that. So I think he's playable. Wagaman's not on either site, but he'll be in the lineup. Nico Cavadas, cheap lefty with a little bit of power upside. 9.85 in the home run model, 24-22 across sites. Easy to see where the path to success could be given the contact and the power that Zebby's allowed. But he's also a fairly high strikeout option, 39.3% in the show so far. And then Jordan Adams in the lineup. Let's see Adams' numbers. Now, turning 25 at the end of this season. Not off track. Was a highly touted prospect. Lands now 23rd organizationally, oddly. 15 home runs and 44 steals in 2023 in AAA. This season, 10 home runs, 28 steals. Surprised Graphs knocked him down that far. Oh, that's 2023's prospect report. They never update these things. Where's he rank now? Is he off the prospect board? Yeah, he dipped significantly on these prospect rankings. 6 plate appearances that were unproductive this year in the show. 40 plate appearances last year. He stole a base. Remembered him being a higher ranked prospect than what it looks like he was last year and then coming into this year, though. Maybe you play him in a lineup or two because he's so cheap. If you're building a lot of Angels, you get him on base, he can clearly steal bases. On the Twins side, they're definitely going to be interesting against all the contact that Kachanowicz is going to allow. So as much as I think he is a reasonable alternative, you can see the difference. Zebby's projected for double in the median projections. So you can see right there, the total lack of strikeouts definitely handicaps the pitcher, and it makes any team against him at least a reasonable consideration just based on the frequency of balls in play that they're going to get. The Twins remain super cheap across sites given their talent level. I mean, for one thing, if this is the version of the lineup that they roll out, those hitters from 2 through 6 have a collective 129 WRC plus. Just based on that alone, they should not have a collective price of $39.80. It's just stupid cheap on DraftKings. I don't get it. They're cheap on FanDuel, but they're not that cheap. Royce Lewis, by far the most expensive player in the lineup at $5,000, $3,300 on FanDuel. Over 257 plate appearances. The output has dipped a little bit. We're at 243, 304, 509, 265 ISO, still at 16 home runs, a 123 WRC plus. But the skill set hasn't changed. We know that the player's got insane upside. 9.79 in the home run model against Kachanowicz here. Going to have plenty of opportunities to take his shots at the seats if he's in the lineup. He was out of the lineup last night. Edward Julian at the top of the lineup for just 29 at second base is really interesting. 25 on FanDuel puts him on the board as well. 8 home runs in 275 plate appearances. We know there's power in that lefty bat. Definitely an interesting player up top. He's a high strikeout. You know, some of these Twins could contribute some strikeout bonus to Kachanowicz, but it's their best opportunity in the world to not strike out today, despite their 33 and 36% strikeout rates among Edward Julian and Matt Wallner, who homered yesterday. Love the upside for another one today. 8.02 in the home run model, 20.6% barrels and 55.9% hard hits. He's hit 12 on the season in just 216 chances. He's got a 300 ISO. Matt Wallner, tremendous power hitter. Definitely an interesting option. I'm just going to quickly click together a placeholder lineup so I don't miss this tournament entirely. Following after Wallner, Jose Miranda, definitely a very good line drive hitter that we've talked about quite a bit. He's always in play. He always hits in a good spot in the lineup. He's nobody's idea of a first click option when putting together a twin stack, which means he typically goes under-owned for his upside. For a guy who's created runs 22% better than average, who's hitting nearly 300, a 333 on base, who's provided a lot of quality and is very low strikeout. So a 14.3% strikeout and 4.3% walk. Like we say basically every show, a lot of well-struck balls in play out of Jose Miranda, and now you're going up against a pitcher who is just allowing contact. So like this matches up perfectly with that for this guy to have a very, very good day for the money. So again, wherever you're not rostering Kachanowicz as a alternative discount pitcher, just plug in some Twins, because it's a great opportunity for them. And Jose Miranda is probably going to be lower owned than he should be. Trevor Larnach for just $32.29, another tremendous opportunity for power. 6.50 in the home run model. He's not all that high strikeout. Makes very good contact from the left side. Has 15 homers and 353 plate appearances. Has a 195 ISO on the season. He's just dirt cheap for really no good reason. He struck out at a 34% clip last year. But that's, demonstrably improved now. This isn't a full sample, but it's not nothing. 350 plate appearances is substantial enough for me to say that Trevor Larnach has made strides in limiting his strikeouts. Whether it holds up at 22, 23%, or it climbed if you gave him another 300 plate appearances, does it climb to 26, 27? Sure, probably. I would say probably, not even maybe. But that's still way better than 34. That's still a dramatic improvement. This guy's just cheap. Carlos Santana, not having a bad year. Still very low strikeouts, so very much of the same thing applies. Santana does spend more time trying to draw walks than Jose Miranda does, but the same thing absolutely applies for the low strikeout nature and the high quality hitter. Santana's hit 21 home runs this year. He's got a 188 ISO, still very capable of driving the ball against a pitcher who's going to allow him to make contact with it. Brooks Lee, mix and match quality. I managed to not put him in my twin stack in favor of Tommy Edman, who had a day yesterday, but it didn't help my total lack of scoring from my Yankees in my lineup. Otherwise, it was a decent lineup. Christian Vasquez at the bottom of the lineup, 28-24, mix and match quality catcher at the absolute best, and probably not even that. And then Deshaun Kiersey managed to not get added to either site today, despite being on the lineup yesterday, which kind of sucks. Twins bats. Zebby, despite the popularity. Kachanowicz, Angels bats. Well, I kind of wanted to put the Angels bats on top of both pitchers. I'm going to do that. I'm going to revise those rankings that nobody actually goes by anyway. I'm going to say Twins, Angels, then Zebby. I think there's downside. There's a clear downside, and especially with all those people piling on, it does make the Angels more appealing. It does make them an angle to attack all that Zebby ownership. So yeah, Angels 2, then Zebby, then Kachanowicz. Trey's going to do a Minnesota-LA game stack. Interesting. Mom and Trey talking a little football in there already. Again, if you weren't here at the very beginning of the show, still as usual behind schedule with football. As I said, I'm about halfway through just checking all the projections. Put it together, adjust, check every single guy. Takes kind of a long time with several hundred options on the board. Obviously, a lot of the lower end guys, it's just like, do I care if he's 0.5 when he should be 0.8? No. Mamba actually does use the rankings. I appreciate that, buddy. Yeah, I know that, it at least gives some perspective to the slate, which is why I like to think it through and get it right. What I mean is, they're not, actually sitting there as a list that anybody has at the end of the show or anything, unless you just jot them down, which I guess makes sense. Anyway, let's get back. Oh, so as I was saying about football, so shows-wise, we're going to go tomorrow now, and we're going to do, kind of a first-look presentation, just like, hey, this is me looking at the numbers here, where I think some stacks line up, where Vegas thinks the stacks line up. We're going to talk about each quarterback, the game situations, the game environments, this past week's numbers as far as what the offenses, the defenses did, and kind of do a game environments, quarterbacks, stacks kind of a show. And then Friday is going to be a hybrid version of our marathon, where we're just looking at the skill player options within those stacks. I think that'll work out pretty well for what this week's schedule has to look like. Tonight, you will have the football projections. Dean Kramer in Fenway Park, not my favorite option on the board. 22% strikeout rate overall for the season, a 4.27 ERA, but a 4.46 xFIP. Walking nearly 10% of hitters isn't going to help you out. Giving away bonus runners in this situation is going to be bad for business. I don't love the upside of Dean Kramer, but I think he's a moderately playable mid-board option on the DK slate. 6,500 is at least very cheap. It's just that 6,500 comes with a major, major risk of downside. So don't love the option against a hard-hitting Red Sox team with a bunch of really good lefties in it. But he does have, it's a pitcher with a actual strikeout rate rather than a Kachanowicz with a 7%. This is a guy with a 3 times higher strikeout rate. It's just he's going up against a really challenging opponent here. But it's not like there's a major, major offset between the Red Sox and the Twins. They're somewhat equivalent. Better ballpark situation here. So Kramer, I think, more threatened. But, I don't know, maybe that's equal threatened because the Twins are just going to have so many opportunities at contact. It's just weird with a pitcher that doesn't strike anybody out like that. Nick Pivetta on the other side is striking out 29.1% of opposing hitters this season. That's noteworthy on a slate like this. 22 starts, 123 and a third. Stuff Plus absolutely loves the Arsenal. How high does that rate for the entire league by Stuff Plus? He's not. Is he not qualified? Let's say 120. Yeah, Nick Pivetta has, among pitchers this season that have thrown at least 120 innings, Nick Pivetta has not only the highest rating for his full arsenal by Stuff Plus, he has the highest rating by 10 points. It's Nick Pivetta, and this top three is going to, throw some challenges at you, as far as loving Stuff Plus. Nick Pivetta, Hunter Green, Carlos Rodon are your top three. Then Dylan Cease, Logan Gilbert, Tyler Glasnow, Corbin Burns, Taj Bradley, Framber Valdez, and Logan Webb going down the top 10. It's an interesting metric, but Nick Pivetta stands out by how much his stuff is potentially dominant. 11.2% swinging, 27.1% CSW. Still, never harnessed probably the full nature of stuff that grades out that well as far as how it moves through space and time. But obviously has upside and is striking out, again, nearly 30% of hitters this season. He's also, though, giving up a 4.74% home run rate on a way too aggressive barrel rate on a nearly 20-degree average launch angle. A lot of hard hits, a lot of exit velo, not quite over the thresholds, but threatening enough and resulting in 4.74% home runs. Probably some bad luck, some mistakes cooked into there. Neutral ballparks, maybe it's lower, but that is an aggressively high home run rate. It hasn't completely killed him, though, but it does represent some of the difference between that high 4.38 ERA and the good 3.53 xFIP. Talented pitcher, potential sneaky strikeout spot for sure. Orioles coming in with a decent but not killer 22.8% strikeout rate for this lineup. Part of that is pushed up by Jackson Holliday at 33.9. You've also got Kowser at 30%. Some of their key bats are pretty low strikeout. But throw that against Pivetta, and I like Pivetta's upside to at least get a couple of those guys. If he can keep them off the board for runs, if he can suppress their power, which is the key thing here, could go out and have a day for 84, 88. Definitely in the mix for pitching. Does keep the Orioles on the board, though, and believable power upside. You can see Gunnar and Santander, most notably, 14.84 and 17.08 to lead the team. They have 36 and 40 home runs, respectively. But how about Cedric Mullins? After we talked about him again as a highlight player on this team, hitting second yesterday, and for all the quality that he was finding in counting stats, up to now 17 home runs, 27 steals, had a day yesterday, coming right back at 45, 3,000. Looks like a strong consideration again today against a righty who is good, does strike hitters out, but gives up a decent amount of premium contact and power. Definitely believable for the money upside for Cedric Mullins, a guy who we've seen go 30-30 and is approaching 20-30 right now. Just 19.5% strikeouts for the season, too. Putting a lot of balls in play. Santander, again, the best season of his career with 40 home runs on the board. You just play him. If you're going to Orioles stacks, he's probably the top priority player, even to me, over Gunnar Henderson. Just because Gunnar, there are some reasonable alternatives. He's very expensive. I think Santander is the top priority bat in this lineup, followed immediately by Gunnar. Ryan O'Hearn for 48, 29, 13 homers, a respectable slash line, creating runs 15% better than average. Very low strikeout, a lot of balls in play out of him as well. Draws his walks, gets involved. A good option, 4,800, 2,900. I like him better, I think, where I could stick him in the outfield on FanDuel rather than at first base. But he's not a terrible option at first base for 48 on DraftKings. As we highlighted throughout the show, and I promise I won't do again today, Adley is overpriced. As good as he is, the numbers are a little bit limited. 18 home runs, a 144 ISO, a 106 WRC+. He just plays every single day. But that DraftKings price is aggressive at 56. It's higher than most of the other catchers on the slate, I guarantee you. 3,000 on FanDuel makes him a lot more affordable, a lot more playable. Colton Kowser, correctly priced at 54.31, has 20 home runs on the season, a 191 ISO, another good lefty bat in this lineup. Austin Slater, a mix and match option when he's facing a righty. There's a lot less quality there. Jackson Holliday has not been good in the show yet, but is hitting the ball secretly very hard. 8.6% barrels and 43.8% hard hits is the best thing he's done so far. Managed 5 home runs and 3 stolen bases. These came in a hurry after he got recalled and then went back into the ditch. 54 WRC plus to start the career is unimpressive over 177 plate appearances. But the kid was tearing up the minor leagues. He's one of the higher end prospects of the last couple of seasons. think we still continue to give him chances at very cheap prices. So if you're stacking Orioles, he's on the list. Emmanuel Rivera, mix and match quality, 2 home runs, 2 steals, and 257 plate appearances. On the Red Sox side, I forgot to check. Did Willie Abreu end up doing anything yesterday? They lost 5-3, so less than likely. 0 for 3. Rough one for the Willie Abreu whisperer. I tell you what, though, I would go right back to him today. I continue to love the upside when he checks in at just 4,100, 3,000 across sites, particularly on DraftKings. He is the key to unlocking Red Sox value. That said, you've also got Masataka Yoshida for just 39. You've got Connor Wong for 39, where you have to play catchers. Tristan Casas for just 44. Trevor Story, let's not sleep on Trevor Story at the bottom of the Red Sox lineup now for 3,500 on DraftKings at the shortstop position, just 2,600 on FanDuel. I know it's been a minute. I know that he benefited from Coors Field throughout the first, 8 years of his career or whatever it was. That is still a talented guy. He had a good first season with the Red Sox like we looked at 2 years ago that doesn't really get accounted for because of the injury-marred nature of, how the last few years have been. There's still a player lurking in there somewhere, and he is cheap. Cedric Rafael is a mix-and-match guy, but, top to bottom, there's quality here. And the 3 tremendous lefties off the top, most noteworthy. Jarren Duran at 6,000, 3,900, more expensive than Rafi Devers, probably unfairly so. Devers has the higher ISO, the higher slugging percentage, the higher WRC+. He's hit more home runs, similar slash line, better on base percentage, hits the ball significantly harder than Jarren Duran does, and plays a more key position at third base. But I'll take it. If they want to make Rafi Devers cheaper, that's perfectly fine by me. Both of those guys are super, super high priority players if you're going to the Red Sox. Red Sox look like a high priority stack on this slate. To me, they were one of the higher run totals on the board at 5.13 runs. The Twins were at 5.31. So, yeah, Red Sox high priority, and all 3 lefties up at the top, very high priority. Williard, just to put some notes on it, 15 home runs and 389 plate appearances, a 50% hard hit rate, 12% barrels, a 230 ISO. It's over 389 opportunities now. Maybe he's not the most tremendous home run hitter, but he can clearly hit some home runs, and he hits the ball extremely, extremely hard. A lot of extra base hits so far. Really interesting player. They continue to roll out at the top of their lineup, so clearly they have faith. I don't understand why he's so cheap. O'Neal, 54-35, tons of upside, 29 home runs. We'll get 30 out of him this season. 283 ISO, 140 WRC+. When Tyler O'Neal's healthy, he's one of the best hitters in baseball as far as right-handed power goes. He's a tremendous bat. Yoshida is cheap at 39-29. He's hit 9 homers. Very solid slash line, most notably a 356 on base that just keeps them involved in everything they do. 117 WRC plus over the course of the season. Very low strikeout at 13.2%, so putting a lot of bat on ball. Against a pitcher who's not particularly high strikeout, should allow some contact. Puts a few extra runners on base, and all these Red Sox draw decent walk rates to very good walk rates. Pushes up the upside for Boston. Wong has 13 home runs, a very solid line, a 114 WRC plus from the catcher. He's just been good and affordable all season long. Casas, 8 home runs, very good contact this year, much better contact last year. Was injured for most of this season, but still has decent numbers for the plate appearances he has made. Fire away at just 4,400. 3,100 is a great price on FanDuel as well at first base. People are probably sleeping on Tristan Casas late in this lineup, and they should not be. He should also probably be hitting there and Yoshida down here, but that's quibbling. Again, Story terrific at 35-26, and Rafaela fills multiple positions for a cheap price, has hit a decent number of home runs, stolen some bases, contributed counting stats, just infrequently given the low on base and the 85 WRC+, but he's a better DFS option than he is a real-life baseball option. Trying to think of what I want to do with Pivetta. I'm going to go Red Sox bats, Nick Pivetta, Orioles bats, and then and only then some Dean Kramer darts on DK. Dean Kramer really not a great option on FanDuel at 85. I don't think there's enough of a price offset there. Fourth game up, Reds, Cards. Let's see if we got lineups for this one. We do. Jonathan India in the leadoff role. Every time I read his name, I hear Eddie Izzard in my head, the comedian. I had a joke way back when. He's an English comedian, or she now is an English comedian. And the joke was just basically talking about like British colonization over the years, and like after the world changed, they were like, everybody came and they were like, England, what are you holding behind your back there? It's just India and a number of other countries, because they didn't want to give up their colonies. So anytime I hear Jonathan India, I just hear his pronunciation of India. Anyway, little tangent there while we put the lineups in. So Lance Lynn, 80-85, I think is reasonable, given that he threw 80 in the rehab start. The rehab start wasn't exactly effective in terms of he did allow some runs and some hits, but he struck out 8, and he was pitching reasonably well before going down. Going down to injury, succumbing to injury. That was on July 30th was his last outing. Struck out 3, but went 5 innings. Gave up just 1 earned run on a solo homer to Texas. 2 strikeout game over 5 innings, but no runs on 4 hits to the Pirates the game before that. A 6 strikeout game, but allowed 2 runs to the Cubs over 6. So 3 okay starts prior to going down with injury. A total meltdown on July 6th against the Nationals, where he allowed 10 earned runs on 3 homers and 9 hits. Struck out just 2 and walked 4. It hasn't been a good year for Lance Lynn. Nobody's saying it has. 4.06 ERA with a 4.49 xFIP, a 20.8% strikeout rate over his 106 1/3, 21 starts. But more than capable of bulldogging his way through 6 innings of decent baseball against a relatively high strikeout, kind of mediocre Reds team. It's at least a both-sided situation. I can see Lynn succeeding for the 7,000 on DraftKings for sure in 85 pitches against this team, finding 6-7 Ks along the way, getting his way through 5 innings, finding his way to a win with the Cards, looking okay against Brandon Williamson. By the same token, I can see the Reds, some of their high-quality bats like Ellie and Spencer Steer and Friedel up top coming through and ruining Lance Lynn's day in a hurry. So it is easily both-sided. Gun to my head, I don't want to choose Lance Lynn in that situation. I don't really trust these Reds either. I guess I would probably, life on the line, lean with the veteran pitcher and hope for the best. But I wouldn't be expecting necessarily like even a quality start. I just think there's some believability of 5-6 innings with a reasonable strikeout upside for Lance Lynn, but it won't be a clean game. On the other side, Williamson just making his 2nd start of the season. He had another outing in bulk relief. So he made a start on September 1st, 3 1/3, struck out 5, 1 earned run, 3 hits. That was against the Brewers. Then he faced the Mets in bulk relief the other day on the 6th. That was 4 2/3 of 1 hit, 1 run ball, 1 strikeout, 1 walk though. In the minors, over 4 starts, 13 1/3 this season. A very limited 22.4% strikeout rate, 8.2% walks, pitching as a 26-year-old. He made starts in the show last year. We had 23 starts to work with from last year that are 4.46 ERA with a 4.72 xFIP, a pretty bad strikeout rate at just 20%, a 7.9% walk rate. Yes, I know that Lance Lynn is also at a 20% strikeout rate this year. Just, kind of reflective of the downside. He allowed a very high amount of premium contact on a fly ball trajectory, 7.2 degree average launch, over the line for hard hits, over the line for exit velo. Barrel rate is up there, 3.67% home runs. Probably pretty lucky to have kept that under 4. Just kind of a targetable pitcher. 6,000, I guess you could argue that he's at least in the mix for all those just very, very cheap pitchers. But I'd rather go to Kachanowicz for 55, I think. Even with a total lack of strikeout upside. I just think there's more of an opportunity for Kachanowicz to go out there and throw 7 decent innings, where Williamson looks more like a target for bats. On the Red side, going up against Lynn, India off the top, 4,500, 3,100, 14 homers, 12 steals, solid 349 on base, a 104 WRC+. a good, not great player who fills a second base position that's a key position because of how low end it is. He fills it well for those prices. It's not a bad option. Elliott, 62, 4,000, 23 home runs, 64 steals, a 213 ISO. Has cooled for sure, but still, getting the run scoring and the run creating numbers. Just a little bit of a dip in the frequency of the home runs and the stolen base output, but a tremendous any given slate option and above the magic number for home run upside today at 10.52 to lead the team. Steer, 8.95 in the home run model. TJ Friedl at 8.27, two somewhat realistic options. Steer has 19 long balls with 24 stolen bases, a solid 100 ISO, 100 WRC plus, puts him right at league average. The ISO at 175 could be a little bit better. Pushing nearly a 40% hard hit rate should result in some additional extra base hits. It's not tragic, but it's not exactly where you'd want it. Friedl is a reasonable contact hitter. Low strikeout at 16.7%. Should hit for a better average, get on base a little bit more than he does. He's got 11 home runs and 282 opportunity despite not exactly making great contact. 3.4% barrels, 31.9% hard hits. So the power's a little bit weird with Friedl. He's one of these guys who does find some home runs despite that kind of contact. It's somewhat can fool the model from time to time, though. So he's one to, kind of be cautious about expectations with. I think he's very playable given the lefty in the cleanup role for a fair price of it. But expectations-wise, I'd be more looking at like base hits correlated scoring stolen base upside than expecting the big home run out of Friedl. Ty France, 31-25, mix and match quality, 12 home runs on the season. Santiago Espinal, nobody's favorite. A reasonable option at 268, 313, 394, but does really nothing to stand out other than put the ball in play. 13.2% strikeouts, but very limited weak contact. So you don't get a ton of quality out of him. Reasonable option for correlated scoring, but only a 90 WRC+. Jake Fraley, 35-29. Okay slash line over 331 opportunities. Does have 20 stolen bases, but just a 95 WRC+. Novi Marte, maybe not actually a good baseball player. You take the steroids away, and it doesn't seem like he's very good. Obviously, that's a little unfair for a young ball player. It's a rookie season. He had the 80-game suspension. Didn't work in his favor, so maybe he's better next year, but right now looks downright unplayable at the bottom of the lineup. He's just cheap, but has done very little to stand out this season. A 41 WRC+, 4 home runs and 194 chances. Luke Manley for 21-22 across sites, nothing more than a mix and match catcher. On the card side, you get an okay Mason Wynn off the top. Better real-life player for sure than he is a DFS or fantasy player. Low strikeout, medium walk rate, weak contact. Managed 12 home runs on that light contact in 563 plate appearances. Just 10 stolen bases. Looked like he was going to get involved with some more steals, but then just kind of not. 320 on base is okay. Just a 135 ISO. He's a good effective leadoff bat in real life, but for DFS, he's not a great way to fill shortstop even at price. Luken Baker, 3,000, 2,600, one of 2 first basemen in this lineup, followed by Paul Goldschmidt. $1,000 price difference between them on DK, $400 between them on FanDuel. Baker is a reasonable option. Going to give you a similar upside for power, similar upside for a home run. He's got a better mark for a home run in the model than Paul Goldschmidt does. Obviously, we're working with a much smaller sample. He's hit 2 home runs this year in 29 opportunities. Got the reputation for some power in his bat from the right side. Great spot in the lineup if you're stacking this team up. And honestly, not that many issues at this point going away from Paul Goldschmidt and taking the discount to go to him in a better lineup spot. Goldie's hit 21 home runs this year. He is still making good contact. That would be the sacrifice. But you're getting a guy who has made good contact in a limited sample. Goldie's only resulted in 21 homers and a 169 ISO. He's barely scraping by at 1% better than average for run creation. He's just cheap now. You're cheap. You feel good about the name brand that you're putting into your lineup, but that's the same thing as buying Wonder Bread. Nolan Arenado, 3,800, 2,800, 15 home runs, a 126 ISO, a 100 WRC plus. Nothing special there this season. Really problematic in terms of how that swing looks right now. Low strikeout, but has not done much with the contact that he's been allowed to find. The 268 average is the best attribute. Who cares about batting average? Brendan Donovan, 35-29, 11 home runs, mix and match quality, plays multiple positions, gets on base at a decent clip, 334, and creates runs, 108 WRC+. But it's an underwhelming Cardinals lineup, basically top to bottom. I mean, even the good run creators aren't exactly outstanding, the positive run creators. Jordan Walker, challenging second season, better last season than people remember. A lot of attributes to buy the 9.9% barrels and 42.3% hard hits for this season. Most specifically, good hard hit rate from last season and a lot of prospect pedigree. They've just been messing with him as far as sending him down, leaving him up, giving him opportunities, taking him away. Just let him hit. I think he's a good player. I think he's worth buying if you're stacking cards at a cheap price, and he'll be unpopular. There is talent there. You can definitely throw him at a mediocre lefty like Williamson, so I kind of like Jordan Walker's upside. If you're going to cards, he would be my, at worst, fourth priority bat, and easily you could argue that he's my second highest priority bat. There's a case to be made that it's Luke and Baker than Jordan Walker in this lineup, as bad as Walker's numbers might be right now. Thomas Segisi is on the FanDuel slate at the dead min, not on the DraftKings slate. I know nothing about Thomas Segisi. Or I guess it's probably Segis. Or Segesi. I'm not actually sure, because there's not two E's in... Well, there are two E's, but not right in the middle. B-A-B-A-R. Anybody get that reference? Segisi has 20 home runs in AAA and 528 plate appearances this season, 9 stolen bases, 253, 313, 438. Maybe a player we should get on the radar a little bit. Per Graph's numbers, he checked into the season as their 7th best organizational prospect. Okay hit tool, okay power. Looks playable, down lineup. If you're getting desperate and stacking up cards, he is the dead min at shortstop. If you need a filler shortstop in another lineup, maybe you keep him in mind at the min. No reason to expect that he couldn't hit a home run against Brandon Williamson. It's basically a minor league pitcher. Pedro Paz, Michael Ciani, mix and match quality at the bottom of the lineup. This goes Cards bats, Reds bats, Lance Lynn, and I really question the quality of Brandon Williams. A's and the Astros. Got the Astros, don't have the A's. Hunter Brown, love the upside for Hunter Brown to have a very successful day against a highly gettable Athletics lineup. As we've looked at numerous times already, though, the Butler, Rooker, Bleday, Langoliers, Seth Brown, Zach Geloff of it, and now adding Ryan Noda back into the mix. This isn't a completely terrible baseball team. It's weird because they are a completely terrible baseball team, like as it has come together and what the standings say. But as a collection of individual hitters, these guys ain't bad. So it's just a weird situation. It's a weird season. I could see this team, keeping, if they've got, I don't know what the contract situations are. I think Rooker might be up. But if they can keep some of these guys together, there is upside, go forward upside. There is ability in this lineup. I really hope they hit Ryan Noda like up in this territory today, or even in the leadoff spot today. Over 103 plate appearances this season, he was not good. But last season, over 495, he didn't hit for a good average, but he still got on base at a 364 clip. 123 WRC plus. He hit 16 home runs in 495 chances, a 177 ISO. That's a good player. That's a guy who, if you remember back to the days of Moneyball, that's exactly what the Oakland A's. Billy Beane would have been so excited to have Ryan Noda on that team. They would have talked about him in the movie if he had been old enough to play baseball at the time. So I think he's interesting down lineup. Zach Geloff has 17 home runs and 23 stolen bases, a very lousy slash line this year, but 17 homers and 23 steals coming off a 14-14 season and just 300 plate appearances last season. You can't tell me there's not DFS quality at the very least there for 32-28 at second base. Seth Brown for 3,000, 2,600. Mediocre year this year, but the home run total starting to climb, over 350 plate appearances, 14 homers. 167 ISO. He's created runs 5% better than average. He's part of this group at the top of the lineup that is actually pretty good. A couple years ago, he hit 25 home runs. Shea Langoliers has 25 this season with a 218 ISO. Lacks quality in the average, the on-base department, lacks regularity, but a 104 WRC plus for a cheap catcher option with tons of premium contact upside. A lot of home run ability. Puts him on the board. JJ Bleday at 37.28 has 20 home runs this year and 577 chances. Limited for contact. The 8.6% barrels is okay. The hard hit rate is pretty low, but he's found his home runs along the way. He's got a very solid ISO at 207, so there's a lot of extra base hits coming out of JJ Bleday. Lefty bat in the heart of the lineup, 37.28 in the outfield. Super, super affordable. Brent Rooker, 55.37 for a guy with 35 home runs this season, 281 ISO, 168 WRC+. Plus. He's honestly underpriced. He should be a little bit more expensive. It's 12.30 to lead the team in the home run model today. And then Butler at the top of the board is now up to 386 pretty high quality plate appearances. 253 ISO, 21 homers, 14 steals, a 139 WRC+. 12.7% barrels and 49.3% hard hits. All of that is to illustrate just the quality of the A's in terms of they're very cheap and they remain playable. It wouldn't completely stun me if they had an okay day ruin Hunter Brown's day. None of that dings the playability of Hunter Brown at all. He's a tremendous option at the top of the board. It just means that the A's are a little bit playable as a hedge position to a big Hunter Brown share. You don't need to hedge it, but you could. And I think they're a little bit playable as just a cheap angle into the slate. And going forward, I think that's going to continue. It's been the case for the last month and change. But the play here is probably Hunter Brown. 9,000, 9,400. He's very fairly priced for this matchup. 25.2% strikeout rate for him this season. 25.5 for the opposing lineup for the projected version. 3.41 ERA, 3.52 xFIP. Solid but not spectacular swinging strike rate at 9.9%, right around the average. 26.7% CSW is a little disappointing. He's a good ground ball oriented pitcher, just 4.3% barrels, 9.7 degree average launch this season. Spectacular numbers for limiting premium contact. 29.9% hard hits, 85.8 miles an hour of exit velo. He's been really good at limiting opposing bats. Even with that, though, again, some of those A's creeping up to and above the magic number for home run upside. It's not a true both-sided situation. Again, I greatly prefer Hunter Brown. But it's a little bit of a both-sided kind of a spot. And if nobody else goes there, if you're building a bunch of lineups, throw some A's in. It's not a waste of time. Bottom of their lineup, by the way, I skipped over Max Schumann and Jake Wilson. Jake Wilson's kind of interesting, 24-22. It's just I would rather have him at like second base than shortstop. But the kid hit for average and got on base pretty effectively. They hit him leadoff yesterday. Could go back to that role today. Should be a decent table setter. So an interesting player late in the lineup for cheap as well. And then Schumann's just kind of skippable. 7 home runs, 12 steals, and 85 WRC+. On the Astros side, they're going up against Joey Estes, who has a 4.46 ERA, a 5.12 xFIP, a 3.91% home run rate that could easily be higher given the 9.3% barrels, the 40.5% hard hits, and 89.4 miles an hour of exit velo. Low strikeout, low walk rate pitcher. Hasn't been completely awful through the season. Has had a couple okay starts, but really much more of a target for Astros bats here. I don't think we're arguing much for Joey Estes shares, even at 66. Limited upside. 2 starts back, did have a 7 strikeout game against the Rangers, 2 earned runs allowed on 6 hits. That was an okay outing. A couple of 5 strikeout games before that. One of them he went 7 2/3 against the Rays, 5 Ks, 1 run on 3 hits. That's a good start against a bad team. The Astros are notably better than any of their recent opponents. It's a complete version of the Astros, although no Kyle Tucker, that sucks. He was the home run pick today. Well, shit. I guess they were serious about the fact that he wouldn't play every day coming back. That knocks him down a peg. Obviously, it's a huge bat to take out of this lineup. Kind of sucks. But I still greatly prefer the upside for the Astros. It'll probably come down a little bit, though. I expect that run total probably came down by a quarter of a run or a half a run or whatever. Half a run for the game, quarter of a run for them. Still very worth going to against Estes, though. Altuve, future Hall of Famer at second base, 5,200, 3,600, 19 homers, 20 steals, another tremendous season. Outside of the ISO, which we've talked about a bunch of times, still puts a ton of balls in play, still gets very involved, has his counting stats in place. Totally fine going to him at second base. Jordan Alvarez is tremendous, 59, 39 across sites, 32 homers, a 258 ISO, having another killer season for the outfielder. Jainer Diaz, back up to the 3rd spot in the lineup, a tremendous catcher option for just 46 on DraftKings, 31. the picture of comparison for Adley Rutschman. I know I said I wouldn't do it. I won't put him in side by side, but he's outperforming Adley in basically every category. He's only 2 home runs shy. I think Adley's got 18, and he's significantly cheaper in a great lineup against a bad pitcher today. So just a great catcher consideration. By the same arguments, Shea Langoliers only costs 42. Bregman at third base, 48-32, 22 home runs, a 186 ISO, 115 WRC plus. Ended up having a pretty okay year. We were really concerned about it for a while there, but he pulled it all together. Solid 10 in the home run model today. 41.2% hard hits and 6.5% barrels is actually better than he's been the last 2 seasons. John Singleton barrels the ball with a decent amount of frequency. High strikeout, but draws a decent high walk rate. 13 home runs and 368 chances. He's just mediocre, but he's cheap at first base. They don't have a first base alternative, so you can go there if you want to. He is a lefty bat with a little bit of power upside to throw at Joey Estes. 6.41 is about right in the home run model. Jeremy Pena, mix and match quality shortstop. A little bit of speed, a little bit of home run ability. Not bad across the board, but also not good across the board. Like dead at league average for run creation and just highly average across everything. But that does make him playable at these prices. Just not a great position at shortstop. I'd rather have a better shortstop. Ben Gamel, Jake Myers, Mauricio Dubon, mix and match quality down lineup for cheap prices. Among them, Jake Myers is having the best season with 12 home runs and 10 steals, but he's also had the most opportunities. He's just a 88 WRC plus for run creation. Dubon a little bit lower than that, but does fill 4 positions on FanDuel, 2 on DK for just 2,200. You can get to those guys. They do help lower the salaries. They can contribute, but they're not the best options on the entire slate. Overall, this goes Hunter Brown, Astros bats. It would have been the other way around if Kyle Tucker was in the lineup. Hunter Brown, Astros bats, A's bats, and really don't like the looks of Joey Estes today, even for price. So, Pavin Smith, 13 home runs in the minors in AAA this season, 289 plate appearances. Had 16 last year across AAA and in the show in 500, low 500s plate appearances. 11 in 545 in the show back in 2021. 12 in AA back in 2019, over 507 plate appearances. 11 in High A. It's not a total outlier that he's hit some home runs recently. He did have a growth trajectory for power. It's just that the growth trajectory never really arrived. That's why he never really put both feet firmly on the ground in the show. But it's not completely surprising that he's hit some home runs lately. I know that player's not even in this game or anything, but you guys are talking about it in chat, so I wanted to chime in. Power's throwing some, looks like ownership numbers into the chat. Oh, that came up because Schwarber was scratched from the early slate if you're playing that. Good note there, Power. Appreciate it. Best pitching matchup of the day overall as far as 2 good pitchers going against each other here. Really like the looks of both of these guys. Michael King, 96, 10,000. Not unfairly priced for a tremendous matchup against the Mariners. And then don't sleep on Brian Woo's talent. He is very good. It's just the low strikeout nature of the pods against his kind of low strikeout rate overall. Kind of checks the true ceiling nature of the spot. But Woo is very good and is capable of paying off those prices even against the, even against the low strikeout Padres team. King for the season, striking out 28.2% of opposing hitters, one of the top marks on the slate. But you can see, in Stuff Plus, he's fairly significantly below average, 6.5 points below average, still finding his strikeouts, making it work. And then we see a guy like Pivetta, a couple of strikeout percentage points higher with that dominant Stuff Plus rating. So that's where Stuff Plus comes and goes. Brian Woo at 103.82. It's not a direct correlation, by the way. It's not, Stuff Plus is not necessarily indicative of strikeout stuff, but you can typically expect some kind of correlation there. But it's about, again, the movement of the ball through space and time, essentially. It's about the characteristics of the pitch, and it's measured by a bunch of different things. But it doesn't necessarily directly equal strikeouts, because you can see Brian Woo over here, an above average stuff plus rating, but just 20.2% strikeouts this year. Doesn't walk anybody, doesn't allow any kind of quality contact, keeps hitters off the board tremendously. 2.36 ERA with a 3.84 xFIP this season. He's been really good. But between the two, King's got the higher ceiling just based on the dominant strikeout ability. 12% swinging strike rate, a very, very good 31.6% CSW. That compares to 10.2 and 28.7 on the other side. You can see the gap between the strike throwing ability. Woo's more of a limiter. King's more of a I'm going to come get you kind of a pitcher. Which accounts for the price difference between the two. Woo in his last start, 5 innings, 2-run ball, 8 hits, 6 strikeouts against Oakland. Just 3 strikeouts against the Angels. Gave up 4 earned runs on 5 hits in a bit of a disappointment over 6 1/3. Good start against the Giants. Found the strikeout upside that they offer with 7 Ks in that one. 2 runs, but only 1 earned on 4 hits, 7 innings. 6 1/3, 2 runs against the Dodgers at Los Angeles. 5 strikeouts, respectable against that Dodgers team. 7 innings against Detroit, shutout ball, 4 hits, 6 strikeouts. So you can see there is 6-7 strikeout upside for Woo on the right day. Today against this team, it's probably more in the 4.5 to 6 range. But there are at least a pocket full of strikeouts for him to take home tonight. He's effectively gone 6 or 7 innings in... It was 6 straight starts before that shorter 5-inning outing in his most recent one. And in the majority of his starts this year, outside of a couple weird ones where he came out with just injury flare-ups, he's been pitching deep into games. So he gives you a little bit of depth, a little bit of upside toward the quality start. We'll see if they get the win. Going to be difficult for them to beat King with as bad as they've been. 24.6% strikeout rate for this Mariners lineup, 19.2% on the other side, and the true number is probably more in the 15 range. If you're stacking pods against Woo, that's probably the more stackable of these two teams. Between the two, it'll be the more highly owned, but neither of these teams is going to be popular, and neither is all that worthwhile, honestly. These two pitchers are that good, and Vegas kind of agrees with that. We saw it early in the show. Both of these teams checking in 3.55 and 3.52, or 3.53 in terms of the implied run totals. So very much favoring the pitching in this one. But if you go to the pods, Luis Ariz is an option as a table setter. High likelihood for 2 or 3 base hits, and then needs help from his friends for correlated scoring. Just a 110 WRC plus this year. 351 on base is still very good. He's a very good bat on ball player, but you don't get all that much else, and he doesn't really give you much individual scoring upside. Second base is where you'd want him on either side. They did add that back on DraftKings, fortunately. Fernando Tatis, 51-36, 15 home runs, a limited season, over 374 plate appearances. Not a bad season. 130 WRC plus is very good, 30 points above average for run creation. The home run total feels a little bit light. 20 and 374 is more probably appropriate for this player. It's nitpicking, but the 187 ISO, we want 200 plus from this player, especially if you're going to be priced at this level on FanDuel. This is affordable. This is a little bit higher. The barrels, the premium contact, it's all there. It's just a little bit of lacking in the results department. But if you gave him another 300 plate appearances, would the numbers have rounded in a form? I think absolutely. Jurickson Profar, 44-34, 22 home runs this year, a 140 WRC plus. Just keep on including him. He keeps on hitting, and he's not all that expensive on DK. FanDuel's a little bit more challenging, but you can get there if you're stacking this team. Just not a good day to stack this team against Woo. That's going to be true for most of the week against the Mariners pitching staff. Or is this day 3 of a 3-game series? It might be. Whatever. 43,000 for Jake Cronenworth, 16 home runs, a 155 ISO. Playable piece. Not anybody's idea of a star, but an effectively average player who gives you a little bit of contributions here and there in basically every category. Xander Bogaerts, 39-29. Challenging season, 9 home runs, 10 steals, 6 points below average for run creation. Still low strikeouts, still capable of putting balls in play, making things happen, but it's been a bad year. Jackson Merrill has been a very good year. 23 homers, 16 steals, a 208 ISO, shot at the Rookie of the Year. You're absolutely throwing him into lineups, and he should honestly be hitting 5th instead of Jake Cronenworth in this lineup. Higashioka, 36-28, 16 homers on the season, a 277 ISO. You guys know I like him as a cheap catcher dart for power. We've talked about him throughout this run of home run upside. Just 228 plate appearances. He's getting up toward the level of plate appearances that saw him hit 10 home runs each of the last 2 seasons. So his best year yet. Not a great option, but capable of blasting one over the wall, even against Brian Wu. And then Mason McCoy's a mix and match caliber option at the very best at the bottom of the lineup for cheap. Victor Robles off the top of the Mariners. I forgot to check if we have these. We don't. Presumably, Robles back at the top of the lineup, 36.28. Remains very cheap for a guy getting on at a 366 clip in a medium sample of 237 plate appearances. He's stolen 24 bases. He's getting on. He's creating runs 31% better than average. They gave him an extension. They obviously like what he's doing. He's been low strikeout. Once upon a time, I told this story 200 plate appearances ago when this little run was first starting out. Once upon a time, guy was the 5th highest prospect in all of baseball. Medium power, high-end speed prospect, your 15, 18, 20 home run, 30-plus steals kind of a guy. Had a really good rookie season. COVID hit. Never was the same. Never really caught back on full-time with the Nationals. Finally got DFA'd out of Washington. And is now looking again like the player that he's supposed to be over these 237 opportunities. So you're just buying a guy who might have finally found his form at I want to say he's still just 27. Yeah, 27, just turned. 27 years and 3 months, which is, if you know about, trajectory forecasting for athletes, age 27 is the start of your absolute prime, typically. So it might just be a player finally finding it, hitting his prime, getting a chance, and was always regarded as being a guy with a very good shot to be a good contributor in the major leagues to do exactly what he's doing. Definitely in consideration. Julio Rodriguez is cheap, 4,500, 3,200 for a guy we've seen do it over the last 2 years. He's just been kind of limited this year. He is above average for run creation now. He does have 14 homers and 21 steals. The contact is kind of rounding into form, 9.3% barrels, 44.6% hard hits. Slashing 260, 316, 374. It's not a tragic season. It's just compared to expectations, a really bad season. But overall, like for your average player, those are okay numbers. It's just we expected Julio Rodriguez to be a whole hell of a lot better than like Jake Myers this season. And not necessarily. Cal Raleigh, 30 home runs this year at 217 ISO. Tremendous catcher option for just 4,400. Another catcher who just compares very favorably from a similar lineup spot every day with monster upside for a much cheaper price to some of those other catchers. Arena, 42-33, 19 homers, 20 steals. Good counting stat contribution from a good player who's created runs at a very solid above average clip, 13 points above average based on his on-base percentage. So you're still getting that out of Arena. It makes him playable basically every day. And that alone makes him one of the bigger upside spots on any given slate that he's on, because we know that he's got monster capabilities, very high-end skills. Multi-category stuffer. Last season, 23 home runs, 22 steals, 254, 364, 425, a 126 WRC plus. Year before, 20 home runs, 32 steals. So we're not actually far off the mark in terms of the counting stats. It's just the average has been a little bit disappointing, a little bit of bad luck in there. By some measures, he's exactly on pace. So I think you just continue to go there. You're buying a cheap ceiling for a good player. Luke Raley, 38-3,000, has 19 home runs, 9 steals, a 217 ISO. Another very cheap player with a little bit of ability and definitely the ability to drive the ball. Michael King makes a mistake. Luke Raley can take advantage. Justin Turner, Jorge Polanco, J.P. Crawford, and Josh Rojas all are having bad seasons at the bottom of the lineup. Turner at least is creating runs and getting on base. It's just he's not really contributing anything else. 17.1% strikeouts is good. You're still getting balls in play. 112 WRC plus is good for correlated scoring. It's just kind of lost at the bottom of the lineup when Polanco, Crawford, and Rojas are going to be kind of disappointing. Polanco's up to 14 homers, but 91 WRC plus. Crawford, 9 homers, 91 WRC plus, below the Mendoza line, and just a 305 on base from a guy who was getting on at a 380 clip last year. And then Rojas at the bottom, 92 WRC plus, mix and match quality. So it's a short Mariners lineup, but if you're going there, the top 5 is not bad. It's just limited by the bottom 4 and the matchup against Michael King, which makes them borderline unplayable. Your quality's in the top 5, though. This goes King, Wu, and really neither of the stacks. But if you had to rank them, it would be Padres above the Mariners. That coffee has gone from piping hot right out of the thing to just like ice cold now in the course of this show. How long have we been talking? That's not that bad. Hour 44. Oh, fun. Thanks for the note, Power. Yeah, I gotta get back onto that. So I'm probably gonna be going back to the beginning and making a bunch of changes on those football projections. Should have known better than to get started early. That's one reason why I do like. I kind of hate getting started early with football. It's so much better to just jump in on like Friday and be like, all right, now that I know exactly what the news is going to look like, or mostly, let me give you a good, realistic shape of the slate. It's going to be a pain in the ass. But that's what I'll be doing after the show, and we'll get that completed again. If you weren't here before, projections up on the site tonight, and then we'll go forward from there with shows and scheduling and everything. Phil got me mad on Wednesday starting this shit. So Colin Ray, more of a target to me for Giants bats. This is the one that we were talking about at the beginning with some weird weather. It's got a 20-mile-an-hour wind blowing out with some debate about whether that enhances or suppresses home run ability. To me, if you're going to have the wind blowing out, there are maybe some physics going on that I'm unaware of that would swirl the wind and just drop the ball into center field, I guess. But the idea that a 20-mile-an-hour tailwind wouldn't help at least some balls is kind of strange to me. So I'm not sure exactly how it breaks down. It's not something I've ever really looked at. It is something that with this ballpark has been debated over a little while now. I'm sure there's good Googleable information about it if you wanted to check it out. But for me, Colin Ray remains a target regardless. 3.83% home run rate on the season. He's over the threshold for hard hits, over the threshold for exit velo, 9.2% barrels. He's a pitcher we targeted for home run upside last year to great success. He hasn't exactly taken major strides forward this year. Every now and then he can spike a decent game and find some strikeouts, and the Giants are a reasonable target for that. So at 7,800 on DraftKings, I do think you can mix him into that like category of pitchers that's between 6 and 8,000 and get to some shares. But I think there's a bigger downside for Colin Ray than there is an upside. You're just kind of targeting the monster 27.8% strikeout rate for this projected version of the Giants lineup. The Giants can definitely push Ks, but they've got two guys in the projected lineup above the magic number for home run power. They've got Matt Chapman at 9, Mikey Conforto at 7.5. Not a bad mark for Yaz. Lamont Wade can definitely hit a home run from time to time. So I really don't like the spot for Colin Ray. I can see the upside. I can see the path to get there, but I think it fails. Blake Snell on the other side, much more appealing option. 98-96 going up against even a good Brewer squad that has just a 20% strikeout rate, although that's obscured by Isaac Collins there. Leaving out the zero, that's 22.6%. Some of their key bats through the heart of the lineup, that's 25.7% for those four hitters. Willie Adames, Gary Sanchez, Rhys Hoskins, Blake Perkins. We'll see what actually rolls out in the lineup. But it's Blake Snell. He's tremendously successful this year. He still walks too many. He still can have his days of being wildly inefficient. But more often than not, we're getting premium Blake Snell, 32.7% strikeouts, a 3.28 xFIP underneath the 3.62 ERA, 16% swinging strike rate, best option on the slate for swinging strikes, 31.7% CSW, one of the top marks for CSW and just general strike throwing. Very good at limiting premium contact, limiting power, limiting home runs, 27.6% hard hit rate, 86.4 miles an hour of exit velo, 5.5% barrels, 1.69% home runs, darling of Stuff Plus. Every single metric down here says fire away with Blake Snell, even with the Brewers in town. And if the wind blowing out does limit home runs and limit hitting, then so much the better for Blake Snell. Even if it does help hitting, I still like his upside because of this absurd ability to limit contact. So either way you split it, I think you're into Blake Snell here. The price is fine to honestly a little bit cheap for the upside. If you're stacking up Brewers, probably not the best spot in the world. They will be low owned, and there is some talent up at the top of the lineup. There are some guys you could typically throw at lefties, but Blake Snell is on the extreme high side of the there are lefties and there are lefties conversation. So not the most appealing spot in the world to me. I'm seeing more strikeout and failure in the Brewers lineup today, but Jackson Chourio would be a high priority item. 273, 327, 463, a 190 ISO, 19 homers, 20 steals. Gonna have a 2020 rookie season for sure. 45-33, still pretty affordable, pretty cheap. 5.21 on the home run model. Probably not going to get number 20 tonight, but could still have an effective day with the ball in the ballpark. William Contreras, 49-34, has 21 homers, 281, 360, 465. Tremendous catcher option with a 130 WRC plus on the year. Willie Adames, best season of his career, 30 home runs, 18 steals. Very, very solid year, 217 ISO. Love the option. He's a little bit cheap for the output that he's had this season. And while it's the best season of his career, it's not entirely shocking. He hit 31 home runs in 2022 in 617 plate appearances. He hit 24 in 638 last year. He hit 20 in 584 chances back in 2019, 25 in 555 in 2021. He's always been a good power bat. The reason I say this is his best season, 122 WRC plus. The only year that beats that is a 126, but that was over 205 plate appearances in that funky 2020 season. He had 8 home runs that year, had very similar numbers, 259, 332, 481. Most of the other years, he was a little bit limited by average and on base. Like the year he had 31 home runs in 2022, he slashed 238, 298, 458, was a 109 WRC plus. Last year, despite the 24 home runs, 217, 310, 407, and a 94 WRC plus was a bit of a problem. So just a really nice return to form for Adames. This is why, this is supporting evidence for why I think 48 is a little bit cheap. 36 is about right on FanDuel. Gary Sanchez, if he's in the lineup as a secondary catcher option, is definitely a smash spot. Just the Blake Snell of it. Not a smash spot. Against a typical lefty would be. If you're going to Brewers, though, Gary is still a high priority bat because of his home run ability. Makes excellent premium contact. Always has. That has never, ever gone away for this hitter. He's crazy inconsistent, and he's not a very good catcher, so he's relegated to like DH most of the time. And just never really has a role on teams anymore, but still is always going to hit for power when he's in a lineup. 10 home runs in 241 plate appearances with a 185 ISO this season. Last year, 19 homers in just 267 chances with a 275 ISO. Year before, 16 and 471 was all right. There's still a ton of power from the right side in Gary Sanchez. Reese Hoskins has a ton of power for 37-29. He's hit 23 homers in 460 chances this year. Crazy inconsistent, but great bat on ball skills. Both guys super high strikeout and could just feed the beast for the strikeout upside for Blake Snell, which is probably what they're going to do. But if you're going again to Brewers, those righties with power are definitely high priorities. Blake Perkins, 27-28, mix and match quality. Does have 20 stolen bases and 92 WRC plus, a little limiting though. Joey Ortiz, 109 WRC plus, not a bad option late lineup if you're going to this team. He does hit right-handed, cheap at third base, a little bit of ability at second base on FanDuel. 10 home runs, 9 steals, but ultimately just a mix and match guy. 41 steals out of Bryce Turang, limited to the 9 spot against the lefty, probably not a great option. And then Isaac Collins hasn't contributed much because he's made 2 plate appearances. This game is going to rank out with Blake Snell on the very top of the board. And then probably Giants bats. I'm going to go Blake Snell, Giants bats, Colin Ray after that, and then and only then the Brewers. Isaac Collins is 27 years old, just turned. 14 homers, 24 steals, and 500 plate appearances in AAA this season as a 26-year-old. Medium power, decent speed, kind of an option it looks like. So if for some reason you're stacking up a ton of Brewers against Blake Snell, you can mix in a little bit of mid-priced Isaac Collins on both sides, but very, very low expectations. Again, this is Snell, Giants, Ray, Brewers. And Ray is really not a good option in my opinion. I gotta stop. I gotta limit that. Ray's a pitcher that I prefer to target with bats. It's not saying that he's not a good option here is probably a misstatement because he is affordable at 78 and there is definitely strikeout potential here. He's been limited for Ks this year, but he hasn't been bad for walks. Last season he had a better 21.3% strikeout rate. This season peaked at 9 strikeouts. But he also has a pair of 8 strikeout games, a 7 strikeout game in here. So again, every now and then you can spike a little bit of upside with Colin Ray. So I don't want to say he's not a good option, or I don't want to say he's a good option either. I don't want to say he's unplayable, but I tend to attack him with bats more than I roster. Last game up, Cubs, Dodgers. Jordan Wicks at 68-66. Looks pretty limited against the Dodgers, a team we never like to target. Last 2 outings went exactly 5. Faced the Nationals, 5 innings of 1-run ball, allowed 4 hits to 18 hitters, struck out nobody and walked nobody. Against the Mets, he did a little bit better for Ks. He struck out 4, but he also walked 4. Gave up 3 earned runs on 5 hits in 5 innings. In 7 starts in AAA. Oh, no, that's just 7 outings. Is that not even starts? Was he just opening? He started 7 times in AAA, but he only threw 21 innings. 4 2/3 in the most recent outing on August 25th. 4 strikeout game. 4 innings, so just building back up, I guess. Yeah, he'd been hurt, pitched early in the season, hurt again, I guess. I admittedly did not have my eye on Jordan Wicks all this time. For his career in 15 starts in the show, a 4.21 ERA with a 4.20 xFIP, a 19% strikeout rate, and a 7.9% walk rate. So essentially, that's like a half a season as a starter in the show. Pretty limited. Definitely seems like a target for some Dodgers bats. Ohtani up above the magic number. Some of these guys could be higher. Will Smith, again, not a pitcher. God damn it. You'd think by mid-September I would have remembered to just do this every single day out of default. But I don't. Anyway. So yeah, the Dodgers, typically high end. I'm a little bit surprised that the home run numbers are quite as limited as they are. Does look like we've got a decent track record with Wicks for not allowing power, though. A relatively ground ball-ish trajectory. Just 7.4 degrees last year helps contribute to that. Though he did allow a 3.40% home run rate with a 4.41 ERA, a 4.30 xFIP. You could probably expect a little bit more power potential from the Dodgers than what might be showing here. I think the model's a little bit bamboozled by those limited sample numbers. 10.5 for Shohei Ohtani. He's got 46 on the season, 47 stolen bases, a 168 WRC+. You got a 5.4 out of Mookie with believable potential for more. 17 homers, 14 steals, tremendous slash line. He's fantastic. Freddie Freeman getting a little bit cheap at 53.35 for a 285, 383, 486 hitter with a 201 ISO, 21 home runs, and 577 plate appearances. Feels a little bit light on DraftKings at 53 at first base, especially with the career track record that we have with Freddie, a good lefty bat against a good lefty bat. Teoscar for 5,000, 3,500, 28 homers, 10 steals, very good season, 222 ISO out of him. Will Smith always playable at the catcher spot, but again, like I said yesterday, he kind of joins Adley in that, a little bit of a disappointing season compared to where we would expect Will Smith. In general, for a catcher, a 106 WRC plus, 17 homers with these numbers is perfectly fine, and he hits the ball very hard. But we've seen Will Smith a little bit better than this over time. He's just an everyday catcher, so he gains ground for that. 4,800, not completely mispriced by any means, especially when you put Adley up in the 56 range. So he's just playable in this lineup. Tommy Edman coming off a big day, 2 home runs and 5 stolen bases on the year now, 293, 316, 427 in just 79 plate appearances. Player we've got track record with of being a good contributor for moderate amount of home runs, good stolen base upside, good correlated scoring when he's managing to get on base, and then in an absence of correlated scoring when he's not. But he's a good mix and match quality player through infield spots. You can put him in the outfield at a cheap price. He's a good addition to this team. Miguel Rojas, good slash line, mediocre player overall. Mix and match quality. Don't love him at shortstop on DraftKings. You can mix him around 3 positions on FanDuel. And then Enrique Hernandez and Chris Taylor have been completely lost this season. Both players are entirely skippable at the bottom. You do have veteran track record with both guys. They're both cheap, but they've both been doing just basically nothing out there this year. On the Cubs side, they're going up against Bobby Miller. Miller's 7,300 on DraftKings, 7,000 on your FanDuel slate. In his most recent outing, he went five in the start before that against the Orioles. Also faced the Rays on the 23rd before 6 innings. 9 strikeouts against the Rays, gave up 3 earned runs in the 6-inning start. The Orioles start on the 29th, went 5 innings, struck out 3 walks, 3 earned runs on 2 hits. Not a great start. 8 strikeouts coming back off that one against the Angels, though. It was a pretty effective start in terms of the Ks, but he gave up 3 home runs, 3 walks, 7 earned runs on 5 hits, which is obviously kind of problematic against such a bad team. The results have been all over the place this year with Miller. 7.79 ERA, but a 4.46 xFIP. This is still not good, but it's definitely a lot better than that. Stuff Plus still loves the arsenal, but he's given up a monster amount of premium contact. Barrels at 12.2, hard hits at 48.3, exit velo at 92.5. 11.1 degree average launch is neither high nor low. 6.76% home run rate is a tragedy. 21.6% Ks. Last year in the show he had 23.6%. He was good at limiting premium contact and power. Was finding 11.3% swinging strikes and had a very good, a decent 28.2% CSW. Much, much better than this year's 24.9. This year he's walking 11.3%. Last year it was 6.3%. It's been really, really limited this season. The quality last year, he was, he's a high-end kid, high-end prospect for them as far as development. Might need to go down and rediscover his form a little bit because this has been a mess. I think he's playable here for price against a Cubs team that has plenty of strikeouts in the lineup and definitely feeds some strikeouts to high-quality righties. So maybe we get back to, mid-20s kind of range, a 1-4 kind of a range. Could have a successful day. Not the most likely option on the slate. The Cubs are good at drawing walks. Could exploit the high walk rate. They're good at creating runs. They're good at sequencing. Got a little bit of power to exploit the hard hit rates, the premium contact. Cubs bats are probably the better option than Bobby Miller. Ian Happ is just 4,600 for one. 10.03 in the home run model today. You also get Seiya Suzuki at 9.35. Cody in the mid-7s. Paredes at 8.4, whatever he's got left. It's a reasonable option. There's speed up and down this lineup as well. So they contribute in counting stats across the board. And everybody's affordable. The highest priced player is Cody at 5,000 on DraftKings. Ian Happ at 32 is appropriately the highest price on FanDuel. Happ's got 23 homers, 11 steals, a 125 WRC plus, a 211 ISO. Dansby, if he moves up to the second spot, becomes more appealing just based on the premium contact, the track record that we've got with this player over time. He is up to 14 homers and 16 steals. He's kind of slowly but surely pulling those numbers together. The slash line is ugly. He's typically been a better on-base option, 328 on base last year, 329 the year before. So we've lost about 20 points of that. We've lost some commensurate quality in the run creation department, but definitely can still put bat on ball. Seiya Suzuki crushes the ball when he makes contact with it. It's resulted in 19 homers, 14 steals, a 202 ISO. Very good season out of him, over 521. Mediocre season out of Cody Bellinger, but not tragedy. He didn't revert to the bad player that he had become after bouncing back in a big way last year. But he didn't really necessarily have a tremendous year. Didn't hold up this form either. So now we're just kind of having an average season from the former MVP and the guy who last year went 307, 356, 525 with 26 homers and 20 steals. He was very good last season. Does have potential, but this is the highest price on the team on DraftKings. He's mix and match quality. Low strikeout, can draw a walk, can definitely get involved against Bobby Miller. Isaac Paredes has been bad since joining the Cubs. He does have 19 home runs. I think that's one more than he had just recently. So he got one in the last couple games. Was that yesterday? Did he have a day yesterday? Nope. Oh, I was misremembering. He hit that one back on the 26th. Hasn't had one since. Since that home run, he's slashing 238, 377, 262. The on-base is good. Run creation's 3 points below average. No home runs, 7 runs scored, 6 RBIs. At least the on-base skill has been there. Since joining the Cubs, he's at 186, 291, 295, 3 home runs, 17 runs, and 17 ribbies. So it's been kind of bad, but at least it does seem like it's pulling together a little bit around the on-base and the run creation in the most recent stretch of games. He's definitely playable at third base, first base for a fair price. Michael Busch, definitely playable from the left side, 3,800, 2,700, 17 home runs, a 180 ISO, decent power bat, 116 WRC plus, can get involved with via the walk, can definitely contribute some correlated scoring. Nico, mix and match quality, a little bit of stolen base upside, a little bit of on base skills. Another guy who's more of a correlated scorer than anything else. 97 WRC plus because he's relegated to the bottom of the lineup. Crow Armstrong has a lot of skills, comes and goes. Definitely a ton of speed out there on the field that he can make use of when he puts the ball in play. We saw the inside the park home run. He's got 26 stolen bases. Just needs to find consistency of form, find a little bit better batting average, or get himself to first base more frequently. 90 WRC plus isn't great, but he's very cheap. He's playable, but limited. Miguel Amaya, mix and match quality catcher at the absolute best. 7 home runs and 324 plate appearances. No real ISO or WRC plus to speak of. And it went through the Dodgers already. So that brings us to the end of the slate, gang. Christian Vasquez, new dad narrative. Did Christian Vasquez have a kid? Congratulations to the Vasquez family. No obviously ability to quantify something like that, but hey, if you like chasing narratives, there you go. Let's do the pitching board one last quick time here. Blake Snell easily and believably at the very top of the board, but not much separation between him, King, Raggins, even Hunter Brown, right there in that mix. All 4 of those guys projected essentially equally. Pick your favorite matchup, roster them all across a bunch of lineups. Any way you cut it, all 4 of those guys belong in pretty decent shares. The one under the most threat is probably Cole Raggins against the Yankees in Yankee Stadium, but he's also got equivalent, if not better, ceiling than all of those pitchers. 7 innings, 10 Ks is not out of the question for Cole Raggins against this Yankees team. But a 6-run downside game is also not out of the question. Lazy fly ball to right could be a home run. Blake Snell has tremendous upside, but also a little bit limited by the matchup against a fairly low strikeout, fairly high-quality Brewers team, but again, believable at the top of the board with one of the highest ceilings on the overall slate. King's got the best matchup in that group, followed by Brown against the Athletics. King could be super high-end against this Mariners team. They've been bad all season long. There's tons of Ks there. Brown is probably a little bit more threatened by the Athletics, but he's been pitching very, very well, and he comes at a little bit lower of a price for a similar matchup. So no issues going to Brown. Luis Hill, I really don't trust. I buy into the projections based on the fact that he's done it throughout the season, but he was showing some warts already, went on the IL, good start coming back, but now faces a low strikeout, high-quality Royals lineup in Yankee Stadium. I can see the downside. Pivetta against Baltimore, I can see the upside. High strikeout rate. Interesting pitcher, going up against a really challenging lineup, but there are Ks there for him. If he can keep the home runs in check, that's been his problem this year. That's been the difference between him and an ace caliber version of him has been the home runs this year. Brian Wu, limited by the matchup against the low strikeout Padres, but a very good pitcher for a very fair price, most specifically on DK. Zebby, chalk of the day in terms of the value pitching. I think it makes a ton of sense against the Angels. There's plenty of strikeouts for him. He's been pretty bad in the show so far. The walks have been really low. The strikeouts haven't been as high as they're supposed to, as high as they're probably going to get. But he's been a disaster for earned runs, disaster for home runs. So I think he's equally targetable on the other side with Angels, and that does speak to a lot of reasons to maybe just get away from some chalk there. Maybe you target him with some bats, maybe you don't. But just getting off and undercutting some of that Zebby ownership, coming around 10-15 instead of 25-30, I think you're okay. Everybody on DraftKings is taking one of these guys and pairing him with Zebby and ignoring the fact that even Kachanowicz for 58 has a little bit of just that free square ability. If Zebby just has an okay day and Kachanowicz goes out there and throws 7 fairly clean innings even without strikeouts, that's a wash. And he's not going to have any popularity while Zebby's going to have a ton. It's the same thing with slightly more expensive value guys. There's a pretty big healthy bargain bin on this slate. Lance Lynn, even with 85 pitches, could succeed for 7,000 against that medium strikeout Reds team. Bobby Miller, even with the shakiness this season, could pull it together for a start against the Cubs and have a decently big day at 73. Colin Ray, even at 78. That's a big price difference. Paying 2,000 more for Colin Ray is not a good idea. But at least there are alternatives, is the point. I don't really like Ray. I don't really like Dean Kramer in Fenway Park against the Red Sox, but he's in that mix. Lynn, I think, is one of the more favorable options from these green guys. So is Miller. Both of those guys are there. Wicks, not so much against the Dodgers. That seems problematic. Estes, I think you could throw a few times. If you're big into mixing it up and you're like, I'm going to take one of these guys and skip Matthews and pair him with one of these guys, then I do think Estes belongs in that mix. But he's the bottom guy in that mix. I really don't like it. I like Kachanowicz better than I like Estes, despite the projection gap there. Considering the $1,100 price difference for a guy who is more likely to book a quality start, give me 6 or 7 clean innings based on what he's been doing. I think Estes gets lit up here, even in that diminished Astros lineup. And then Williamson is just a challenge against St. Louis. I don't like it at all. Bounce back over here. I will pull up the home run board and show it to you guys. But I got to get back to get this updated and then get my act together with some football projections. That was me yesterday, sorting this to shortstops, trying to figure out how to plug that hole that I ended up with Tommy Edman. Made the right choice. Didn't work out. So Kyle Tucker was the top of the board for home run upside. He was also the home run pick of the day. If I could, I would change that to Jordan Alvarez now, but I don't typically change him. So Jordan would be my home run pick of the day. He was the home run pick from the Astros in the individuals, so we'll go with that one. Love Santander and Gunnar as far as the upside there for power. You can see Ward and Neto right next to one another in the Angels lineup, though, going up against Zebby. Again, some reasons to consider getting away from that chalk. Logan O'Hoppe also right there at 12.48, but he wasn't in the lineup. Matt Thace is probably lurking somewhere in the 7s or 8s down there further. Nolan Chanuel right here in the 9s. Nico Cavadas at 9.85 further down the lineup there. So a lot of power showing for the Angels. They could be sneaky. They could also get completely rocked by Zebby and his quality. Luke Baker, kind of interesting. Sneaky guy. Cheap first base option at the top of the St. Louis lineup. Aaron Judge, obviously just super sneaky. Nobody would expect Aaron Judge to hit a home run. Anyway, guys, let me punch out 5:15. I'll get projections updated for baseball and keep them coming as the lineups get confirmed. And I'm going to be hard at work getting the football stuff done. Make sure you're subscribed to the channel here so you see notifications pop up about football show scheduling. Make sure you're in our Discord. A lot of lively chat going on in there. Some of it about Tyreek Hill and his arrest situation that shouldn't have been going on in there, but the guys are being at least relatively civil about it to one another. But it's always fun, and we're going to have some good discussions going on in Discord throughout the season for football and picking off some under-owned spots that, hey, maybe we only call out in the Discord sometimes. Thanks, Bridge Lion. I appreciate you too, buddy. Bridge Lion, we'll end the show with a nice thought from Bridge Lion. The more I learn about MLB DFS, the more I appreciate this show. That's awesome, buddy. I appreciate you. Hit the like button for me. Hit the subscribe if you haven't already. Good luck out there tonight, gang. Somebody go win something. We'll see you tomorrow.